I was back. Holy crap. That demon woman, she actually did it. She really went for my kidneys. A sharp thud echoed through my head as a warm sensation spread from my forehead across my entire body. I felt the skin start to burn and swell into a small bump. I was lying on the ground of an old, familiar courtyard. Above me, the leaves of an ancient parasol tree rustled, letting thin slivers of sunlight filter through the gaps. The light spilled onto a creaky bamboo chair nearby that swayed slightly, making a rhythmic groaning sound. I scrambled up from the dirt, one hand clutching my lower back, cold sweat dripping down my face. I looked around. The weathered blue tiles, the whitewashed walls, the faint scent of evening primrose, it was all exactly the same. But the memory of those ice blades piercing my kidneys was still fresh. It felt like they were still vibrating in my flesh. Seriously, if you're going to kill someone, just take their head. Why go for the kidneys? Where was the class? Where was the legality? Where was the basic human morality? And most importantly, where was my compensation? I was Su Huai, the sixth most powerful person in the world. If I hadn't been able to trigger this rebirth, my glorious reputation would have been flushed down the toilet. I would have gone down in history as the first rank 9 venerable to be killed by a kidney shot. Life is unpredictable. I played it safe and stayed hidden until the very end, but I guess I got a little too cocky. Note to self, stop drinking. Alcohol really ruins everything. I sighed and flopped back into the bamboo chair. As I settled in, I noticed a maid sweeping fallen leaves in the courtyard. She was staring at me with her mouth wide open, looking completely dazed. Her face reminded me of a certain famous star from those Japanese adult movies I used to watch in my past life. Seeing her actually brought a bit of life back to my traumatized soul. My eyes drifted down. Yep, some things never change. She was as well endowed as ever. As the officially designated heir of the Su family, I felt it was my solemn duty to supervise the staff. I needed to make sure she was sweeping correctly and maybe check on her mental and physical well-being while I was at it. Xiaohe, come over here, I called out. The little maid gripped her broom tight. She jogged toward me but stopped dead about 5 meters away, refusing to take another step. She stood under the tree, looking shy and flustered, her face turning a bright shade of red. Young master, do you have instructions for me? She asked softly. Yeah, Xiaohe, I said, putting on my most serious face. I was just looking at you. Your forehead is dark, you're sweating, and your footsteps are unsteady. These are signs of a great calamity, a big chest omen, if you will. She blinked, her face heating up even more. A big what? A big omen. I nodded gravely. I've studied the ancient arts and the 8 trigrams. Come here. Let me give you a thorough physical examination to help you resolve this cruel, heavy omen you're carrying around. Clatter. The broom hit the ground. She scrambled to pick it up, her face crimson, and bolted out of the courtyard without looking back. Help! Help! The young master is a pervert, she cried. I'm just a hired maid. I didn't sign a life contract. I'm not coming back to this courtyard ever again. I watched her disappear like she'd seen a ghost and sighed. It's hard to be a good person these days. I was genuinely trying to help her with her burden. I was just a 17-year-old boy. What bad intentions could I possibly have? I reached for the teapot on the low table next to me and poured a cup of green tea. Looking down into the water, I saw a handsome, scholarly face reflecting back at me. Clean skin, sharp features, wow. I stared for a second. Who is this gorgeous man? Oh wait, it's just me. Never mind. I downed the tea in one gulp. It tasted like nothing. Honestly, I was used to this whole rebirth thing by now. Don't ask me how. I've just been through it too many times. Ever since I traveled here from a world of 9 to 5 office grinds, I've lived 8 different lives in this world where demons and immortals live side by side. Back in the beginning, I was a pure, innocent kid with a heart of gold. But time, and dying repeatedly, changes a man. I remember the first time I arrived here. I was so excited. Even though the elders labeled me a trash talent who couldn't cultivate, I didn't care. I'd spent 10 years reading web novels. I knew the trash to hero trope better than anyone. I spent my early years checking everything for hidden powers. I hammered on the bricks in the wall, poked every old ring or jade pendant I found, and waited for my destiny to kick in. When I was 17, A girl from a prestigious family came to break off our engagement. Instead of being sad, I was thrilled. I stood up and shouted the classic line. The river flows east for 30 years, then west for 30. Do not look down on a poor youth. But life isn't a novel. After the breakup, no mysterious mentor appeared. No ancient spirit lived in my ring. I couldn't cultivate, I couldn't make pills, and I had no special bloodline. Poor youth slowly turned into poor middle-aged man, and eventually poor old man, until I finally kicked the bucket. In that first life, I spent decades rotting in this small town, waiting for a system to ding in my head. It never happened. I finally realized that if I didn't have a golden finger cheat code, I was going to die a nobody. I'd been given a second chance at life, and I was wasting it. I decided to fight. I packed my bags and headed out to find my own path to power. And sure enough, less than 50 miles from home, I found what looked like a fated encounter. It was a cave covered in beautiful blue flowers with a glowing entrance. It looked exactly like the place where a hero finds a legendary manual. I charged inside, my heart racing with dreams of becoming invincible. I walked a few dozen yards and the space opened up. Right in the middle sat a massive snake, nearly 30 feet long. The snake looked at me and hissed. I looked at the snake and said, "I'm a streamer, please let me go." My dream shattered right there. I don't remember much after that, except that the sun was very bright that day, and the inside of a snake's stomach is surprisingly cold. But then, the universe played a massive joke on me. I closed my eyes in the snake's belly and opened them back on this bamboo chair. It was the morning of the day my engagement was broken. I was 17 again, full of energy. I'd hit a save point. I couldn't go back to being a baby to change my talent, but I knew what was coming. This time, I didn't wait around. After the breakup, I said goodbye to my grandfather, who was the only one who actually cared about me, and hit the road early. I made sure to avoid my 30-foot-long, unbrushing toothed snake friend and kept moving. I remember the wind being very strong that day. The tigers in the western forests were massive. They didn't care about my dreams of greatness. They only cared about my throat. Once again, my life ended between cold, sharp fangs. I jolted awake on my bamboo chair, gasping for air. My body felt like it was still being torn apart. I sat there for a long time, waiting for the nightmare to fade. As the fog cleared, a realization hit me. I had looped again. This was my golden finger. It wasn't a legendary sword or a leveling system. It was just a respawn coin. A forced restart with no save points. I felt cheated. Even a life simulator gives you 3 talents to start with, but I had nothing. I sighed, accepting my ridiculous fate, and prepared for my third life. I didn't yell any slogans this time. In my first 2 lives, I'd screamed about destiny, and it had gotten me nowhere. I was starting to think those heroic lines were a curse. Besides, I'd lived through 3 cycles now. I was basically an old man in a teenager's body. I decided to be smart. I wouldn't go into the mountains alone. I found a group of like-minded travelers, and we headed out to see the world. I thought I was finally on the right path. Then, they started chanting about how they owned the mountain and planted the trees. I joined a gang of bandits. They weren't the Robin Hood type. They took my money, and then they took my life. I died at 17. Again. By the next few rebirths, I was calm. I didn't panic when I woke up. I just started planning. I'd learned from my blood and tears. I decided to find a powerful backer. I spent a fortune to join a high-end merchant caravan. I finally made it out of my small mountain town. But the world outside was a meat grinder. I was like a baby bird hopping out of a cozy nest, only to dive headfirst into a thorn bush. Life was just one long cycle of dying and starting over. I died in natural disasters. I got scammed by a merchant guild and forced to work in the mines. I was kidnapped by an evil cultivator to be used as alchemy ingredients. Once, I was sleeping and got killed by the shockwave of 2 experts fighting miles away. I even got eaten by a passing monster while taking a walk. By my 8th life, things changed. The experience from my previous failures became my greatest treasure. I'd spent decades digging in mines in my past lives, and my heart had grown as cold as my pickaxe. I played the long game. I stayed cautious. I finally grabbed a real opportunity and shed my useless constitution. I rose through the ranks, step by step, until I finally reached the 9th stage, the Sovereign Realm. I was finally at the top. Then came the night of the full moon. I was drunk on the finest immortal wine when assassins from a mysterious sect attacked. I had the upper hand, but in my drunken state, I let them lead me into a bamboo forest. The assassin was fast, disappearing into the greenery. I was frustrated, angry, and very, very drunk. I raised my hand and unleashed a wave of fire, burning the entire forest to the ground. That was my final mistake. The real owner of the forest lived there, a woman at the 10th stage, an empress. She walked out of the flames slowly. She wasn't wearing armor. She was wrapped in a single white towel, carrying 2 ice blades. I don't remember what I said or did. I just remember the look of cold indifference on her face as she cut me down. The memory ended there. I rubbed my kidneys, feeling a phantom pain. My maid, Xiaohe, came back to the courtyard looking nervous. I shook off the memories of the empress and grinned at her. I asked if she had come back because she didn't want to get in trouble for the dirty courtyard. "Master, the clan leader wants you in the meeting hall," she said quickly. She looked like she was afraid I'd say something crazy again. I looked up at the sun. It was noon. Right on time. The engagement-breaking ceremony was about to begin. "Situ Jiruo is here, isn't she?" I asked. I told the maid that my fiancé probably felt she wasn't good enough for a handsome guy like me and wanted out. Xiaohe just stared at me. She told me to stop joking. I decided to have a little fun. I told her that in my past life, I was a super expert, ranked 6th in the world. She just clapped her hands sarcastically. She didn't believe a word. I pointed at a heavy stone pillar nearby. I told her that if I could break it with one palm, she had to warm my bed tonight. If I failed, I'd tenfold her salary. Her eyes lit up. She agreed instantly. Everyone in the Su family knew I was a weakling who couldn't even lift a bucket of water, let alone break a pillar thicker than a man's waist. I raised my hand. I just wanted to tease her. A tenfold raise was nothing to me. I tapped the stone. A massive boom echoed through the air. A shockwave ripped through the courtyard, traveling dozens of feet. My house groaned and collapsed. My bamboo chair turned into toothpicks. Xiaohe turned pale, frozen in place. She looked like her world had ended. I was even more shocked than she was. I felt a familiar, violent power surging through my veins. I wasn't a weakling anymore. Somehow, at this exact moment, my sovereign cultivation from my 8th life had returned. I finally had the perfect start. The casino in the east of the city was a place that swallowed people whole. I remembered Sister Zhang, who washed the laundry in our manor. Her brother was a gambling addict who had lost their parents' funeral money and every cent he owned. He ended up getting tossed out into the snow in the middle of winter, completely naked. He had to pick up a rotten cabbage leaf just to cover himself while he ran home. Xiaohe never expected that her first time playing a risky game would end with her losing herself to me, the notorious eldest young master of the Su family. Her face went pale. To her, her future looked pitch black. I knew what she was thinking. Poor girls taken by rich heirs rarely had happy endings. If they were lucky, they became concubines or low-level maidservants. If they weren't, they were tossed out after the master got bored, only to be spat on by their neighbors. She was probably praying I'd have enough conscience not to steal her clothes before throwing her out into the winter cold. "What are you dreaming about?" I asked. I gave her a quick smack on the back of her head. She jumped, spinning around to glare at me with watery eyes. "Young master, my mother said hitting women is wrong. Only scum hit women." I laughed. "Your mom lied to you. Your dad probably beat her all the time behind closed doors. She probably screamed her head off." "No way," she stammered. "Think back," I said, leaning in. "When you were a kid and your parents were alone in their room at night, didn't you hear strange noises? Like your mom crying?" Xiaohe froze. Her eyes went wide as memories flooded back. She actually had heard her mother sobbing faintly in the middle of the night. Her world shattered. She realized her own father was the scum she'd been warned about. She couldn't understand why her mother acted so sweet and loving toward him during the day if he was beating her every night. I patted her head and pinched her chubby cheek. "All right, your job is done. I'll handle the rest. Go back to the courtyard, wash up, and wait for me to claim you." She nodded blankly and shuffled away like a lost puppy. I watched her disappear around the corner, took a deep breath, and smoothed out my sleeves. It was time. I stepped onto the stone path leading to the meeting hall. The doors of the Su family hall were ancient, weathered by centuries of wind and rain. I pushed them open with a loud creak. The first person I saw was a girl in a moon-white dress with long, flowing hair. Behind her stood a straight-backed young man and an old man who looked like he had a permanent back injury. I sighed internally. This setup was way too familiar. It felt exactly like those stories where the trash protagonist gets humiliated. I glanced at Situ Giroir, the fiancé who had tried to break our engagement 8 times already, then scanned the room. The Su family elders were all there, sitting in a row. Finally, my eyes landed on the middle-aged man sitting in the center chair. He was staring at me with pure disgust. "What are you looking at?" I asked him. "You think I'm ugly? Keep looking, and I'll give you a reason to turn away." Veins popped out on Su Jingheng's forehead. I knew he was regretting that night 18 years ago. He probably wished he'd hit the brakes and wiped me off a wall while I was still a single cell. "You brat. Kneel," he roared. "You tell me to kneel, and I just do it? I have a reputation to protect," I replied coolly. He slammed his hand down, shattering the side table into splinters. "You're looking for death." He stood up, his hands shaking with rage. I could feel his spiritual energy beginning to surge. I didn't budge. This man was my father, the current head of the Su family, and once the top genius of Black Iron City. He had hated me since the day I was born because I had no spiritual root. To him, I was a useless waste who disgraced his name. He tried to strip me of my inheritance several times to give it to my half-brother. The only reason I was still the heir was because my grandfather loved me and insisted on the tradition of the eldest son inheriting the mantle. My father wasn't the tough love type. He genuinely wanted me dead, so I'd stop embarrassing him. That was why, in my previous lives, I always left home to make a name for myself. Situ Giroir and her companions watched the loving father-son interaction with amusement. The white-haired second elder sighed and put a hand on my father's shoulder. "Zhengheng, settle this later. Don't let outsiders see the Su family as a joke." "A joke?" My father spat, sitting back down and closing his eyes. "Our face was lost long ago because of this animal." The second elder looked exhausted. He turned to me. "Su Huai, these 3 are guests from the Situ family. As for why they are here..." Situ Giroir stood up. She bowed politely to the elders before turning to face me. Her voice was cold. "I am here to discuss the marriage contract settled 17 years ago between my grandfather and yours." I looked at the elders. Not a single one of them looked angry. In fact, they looked smug. It was obvious the Situ family had paid them off to support the breakup. This family had no unity left. My mother was long dead, and the only people who actually cared about me were my grandfather and a few servants. This wasn't a discussion. It was an ambush. I didn't care about the marriage, and I didn't care about the compensation they were offering. But I deserved respect. I looked into Situ Giroir's icy eyes and let a small, mocking smile play on my lips. "Oh, the marriage contract," I asked. "Are you so desperate to marry me that you couldn't wait? Or did you finally realize you aren't good enough for me?" The hall went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Then, the younger generation in the corners started whispering. They couldn't believe I had the guts to say that. Some thought I was being a man for standing up for myself, while others just thought I was a fool struggling against the inevitable. Either way, the show was just getting started. The young disciples in the corners were still whispering. Unlike the elders, who only cared about profit and politics, these kids were naive. They didn't understand the world yet. But their opinions didn't matter. Situ Giroir raised a hand, silencing the elder behind her who looked ready to scream at me for my insolence. She stared at me from across the hall, her expression calm and composed. "Young Master Su," she started. "Before coming here, I sent a formal notice. The Situ family has shown great sincerity and already obtained the consent of your clan leader and the elders. I believe I have followed every proper etiquette for this visit." Sincerity? I looked at the elders sitting in their high chairs. Their eyes were cold, indifferent to my dignity as long as their pockets were lined. I turned back to her, my gaze turning just as cold. "I don't give a damn if they agreed," I said. "Is this their marriage or mine?" Situ Giroir frowned slightly. "Young Master Su, I recently passed the entrance examination for the Heavenly Frost Palace. I will be leaving to practice at the Immortal Sect in a few days. You should understand what that means." Her meaning was crystal clear. She wasn't just dumping me. She was telling me she was moving up to a higher plane of existence. We weren't in the same world anymore, so we might as well end things cleanly. I raised an eyebrow. I was actually a bit surprised. In my previous lives, I had been so blinded by the humiliation of the breakup that I usually stormed out before she could even mention the Heavenly Frost Palace. Looking at it now, I could almost understand her. If a girl from a small village gets a chance to live in the big city, she isn't going to care about a childhood betrothal to the neighbor's son. But understanding it didn't mean I had to like it. I thought back to my past lives. I had reached incredible heights in cultivation, yet I had never once heard the name Situjra in the immortal realms. It wasn't because she was weak, but because the immortal world was vast. The Heavenly Frost Palace she was so proud of was a terrifying place, ruled by the Heavenly Frost Emperor. But I knew a secret about that place. The Great Emperor of that sect was currently ranked 4th on the Heaven list, but there was a reason I thought of him in the past tense. The Heavenly Frost Palace was a nest of vipers. Their great elder was a traitor who loved using the flesh and blood of his own disciples to refine pills. In my previous life, that scandal eventually broke. The emperor tried to comfort his old friend, only for the great elder to stab him through the heart while crying about how he was going to turn his big brother into the world's finest medicinal pill. I looked at Situjra again. If she actually went there, she wouldn't be a rising star. She'd be a human ingredient soaking in a jar of spirit liquid. Suddenly, my anger vanished. Why be mad at a girl who was sprinting toward a furnace? I wasn't going to warn her, though. If you tell someone who just got into a prestigious school that it's actually a scam, they'll just think you're jealous. Why waste the breath? My aggressive stance softened instantly. I gave her a literal thumbs up and a smile. The Heavenly Frost Palace, huh? Great place. Full of talent, I said, my voice dripping with fake sincerity. Miss Situ, you're right. We really aren't from the same world. I'm sorry for raising my voice earlier. You want to break the engagement? Let's do it. I wish you a swift rise to the top. I hope you become an inner disciple the moment you step through those gates. Situjra blinked, caught off guard by my sudden change in attitude. She probably thought I was just acting tough because my pride was wounded. She thought that in 100 years, I'd be dust while she remained young and beautiful. I'm glad you understand, she said softly, her eyes searching mine. I know this causes you pain. We were supposed to spend our lives together. But compared to the path of immortality, fleeting romance is nothing. I have failed you. I was confused. What was she talking about? Then, she took a letter from her elder and pressed it into my hand. Take this as proof, she whispered. If you are willing, wait for me for 10 years. If, after 10 years, my path to immortality fails, you can come to the Sidhu family to find me. I will honor our original vow and marry you then. My hand shook. I almost slapped her across the face with that letter. Wait 10 years. You want to dump me? Go try your luck elsewhere, and then keep me as the ultimate backup plan if you fail? The nerve of this woman was unbelievable. 10 years. I repeated the words in my head, feeling a surge of pure disbelief. If you fail at immortality in 10 years, you'll marry me? I looked at Situjra, who was waiting for me to be touched by her generosity. What if she actually succeeded? Then I'd have waited a decade for nothing. And even if she failed, did she really think I was just sitting around waiting to be her backup plan? She wanted to use a hollow, pathetic promise to tie down a man like me. She clearly had no idea who she was dealing with. I blinked, looking her straight in the eyes. Miss Situ, before you go, I have a few words for you. She nodded gracefully, her expression soft. I am listening. You're a delusional narcissist, I said flatly. And you're toxic as hell. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't care about her confused expression or the dark looks from the Sioux family elders. I just turned around, humming a little tune from my old world, and walked away from that suffocating hall without looking back. As a man who had lived for hundreds of years in a previous life, this engagement drama was just a minor ripple in a very deep pond. Breaking things off with Situjra felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was finally done with the lingering obsessions of the original owner of this body. My real life started now. This was my 9th life. I walked toward a small lake on the edge of the estate, taking a moment to actually look at the place where I'd grown up. The Sioux family was the sole power in Black Iron City. Their estate was massive, covering nearly 10% of the entire city. It had mountains, lakes, and even its own private street. Every direct blood relative had their own courtyard. I kept walking, following a mossy path that grew narrower and more isolated. After about 15 minutes, I stopped in front of an old, weathered courtyard. The wooden door looked like it had seen centuries of history. I stood there for a long time before finally reaching out to knock. Asterisk thud. 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 Asterisk. Stop knocking and just come in, you little brat. A voice barked from inside. Since when did you become so polite? As soon as the door creaked open, I caught a scent on the wind. My eyes lit up. I hurried inside toward a stone table where a white jade wine set was laid out. Old man, you're drinking without me. The man I called old man was Suchanga. He used to be the pillar of the Su family, and now he was its secret weapon. Decades ago, after his wife passed away, he left the city to travel the world. He didn't come back until I was 11, covered in scars and carrying a heavy silence. He locked himself in a secret room for 3 days and nights, refusing to see anyone. Back then, I had convinced my idiot younger brother to steal some of our father's prized wine. My father, Su Jingheng, chased me through the hills, ready to skin me alive. I ended up stumbling into the forbidden back mountains where the old man was meditating. It was a pathetic sight, me running for my life, my father screaming behind me. Even though my father hated me, he wouldn't have actually killed me over a jar of wine. But my desperate wails disturbed the old man's peace. Presumptuous, a voice had roared from the cave. Beast, get out. My father froze, muttered a few threats, and scrambled away. But I didn't leave. I was thick-skinned enough to sneak right into the old man's secret chamber. I can't go back, I had told him back then. My dad hates me. He'll kill me. Look, I brought wine. Don't look so grumpy. How about you protect me, and I'll keep having my brother steal wine for you. Before he could even answer, I had already made myself at home. He asked me why I was framing my own brother. It's not framing, I told him with a shrug. He's my father's golden boy. To my dad, if my brother takes the wine, it's just borrowing. If I take it, it's theft. He gets a hug, I get a beating. You get it? The old man stared at me for a long time. Finally, he asked my name. I looked up at the stone ceiling as if I could see the stars through it. Su Huai, I replied. Maybe it was the blood connection, or maybe he was just impressed by my sheer nerve. Whatever it was, Su Changa accepted me that night. And ever since I shared that wine with him, he really had protected me. I pushed the door fully open and realized the old man wasn't alone. Sitting across from him was another elder with snow-white hair wearing a gray cloud-patterned robe. In front of him sat a 7-foot-tall crimson cauldron. It was engraved with images of demons, and a pale blue spiritual flame flickered inside. An alchemist. I quieted my footsteps and moved towards Su Changa, my eyes glued to the cauldron. He saw me looking and smirked. He tapped a brown ring on his thumb, and a white jade cup appeared in his hand. Little brat, want a drink? He reached for the wine jar, but I intercepted him, grabbing the empty cup. No, let me do it. I can't have you pouring for me. I want to live a long life. I filled 3 cups. Su Changa pointed at the man by the cauldron. This is my old friend, Lu Qingmu. He's rubbish at cultivation, but he knows a thing or two about alchemy. Interested? I paused, then gave a self-deprecating shake of my head. No, I'm not cut out for that. At least you have some self-awareness, the old man chuckled. Hey, if you're going to be like that, I'm leaving, I joked. Su Changa laughed loudly. What happened to the kid who used to brag about being the chosen one? Did getting dumped take the wind out of your sails? Let's not talk about that, I muttered, taking a sip of the wine. The liquid was harsh and spicy, making my throat itch. I set the cup down quietly. Based on the smell, I thought he'd brought out the good stuff for his guest. Instead, it was just fire candle brew. Cheap stuff you could buy anywhere for a few thousand silver. Stingy old man. Fire candle brew was like moonshine. It was too strong for me, and I didn't want to use my cultivation to burn off the alcohol. That felt like a waste of good booze. Su Changa noticed me putting the cup down, but didn't call me out. He just watched me with a knowing smile. I thought you'd come here crying about the engagement. But look at you. You look like you just went on vacation. You've really moved on. I nodded. I have. There are plenty of fish in the sea. The old man took a long drink. Good. It's better this way. When you were born, I was meditating with that old ghost Situ on Tingyun Mountain. We made a pact back then based on a friendship that clearly didn't last. My grandfather took a deep breath, his eyes clouding with memory. He told me that when my father first sent word of my birth, that old ghost Situ was right there with him. Hearing I had a grandson, Situ had the nerve to push his half-year-old granddaughter onto me, insisting on an engagement. Now the old man is dead. My grandfather spat. And that girl turns out to have a mind of her own. She looks down on you and comes to our door to break it off? To hell with them. It's ungrateful. If my body wasn't failing me, I'd march over to the Situ house and show them a thing or two. He downed his spicy wine in one go. The heat flushed his withered face, giving him a bit of color. I stepped forward, picking up the jug to refill his cup with a grin. Take it easy, old man, I teased. Why worry about one girl? She doesn't want me? Fine. I don't want her either. Give me a few years, and I'll bring back a fairy goddess. She'll be 10,000 times better than Situ Jirua. Su Changa arched an eyebrow. Oh, sounds like you already have someone in mind. I do, I admitted, my voice softening. A girl I think about day and night. From which family? The Moon Sect, I replied. He looked surprised. You know a girl from the Moon Sect? I've heard stories, I lied, looking away. They say the fairies there are the most beautiful in the world. I figure the prettiest one among them is bound to be my future wife. I turned my gaze toward the roaring furnace. In the dancing green flames, I saw a vision of a girl wrapped tightly in thick robes. We were in a sweltering alchemy room, and I remember thinking she'd get heatstroke. In my mind, I wanted to reach out and pull those heavy clothes off her, but then she looked up. Her face was pale, but her smile was pure sunshine. She opened her hand, showing me a warm, light brown pill. Su Huai, look. I did it, she had said. My first 8th grade pill. Now you don't have to risk your life in secret realms fighting old monsters for resources. I'll refine pills and take care of you. I cursed internally. Evil rich girl. My chest ached. In my past life, I had wrapped that pill in spirit silk and wore it as a pendant, a token of our love. It stayed against my skin for centuries. But a pendant is just a physical object. It didn't reincarnate with me. We had been inseparable for hundreds of years until the betrayal happened. I wondered if she collapsed when she heard the news of my death. Su Huai. Su Huai. My grandfather's voice snapped me back to the present. I blinked, hiding the tenderness in my eyes, and looked at him. What is it, old man? I asked what you were staring at that broken furnace for, he grumbled. Did you fall asleep standing up? No, I said, picking up the wine jug again to fill his empty cup. I was just thinking. I want to go out and see the world. Actually, I came here today to say goodbye. His hand froze. Goodbye. Staying at home isn't doing me any favors, I said. My father hates the sight of me anyway. If I leave, he gets his peace and quiet. Besides, I heard the Moon Sect is recruiting new disciples in the capital soon. I want to hitch a ride and check it out. Su Changa sighed. Your father, Su Jingheng, is a twisted beast. I'll have to find an excuse to break his bones again soon. But you're 17 now. Going out is good. Just don't be overambitious. You don't have a natural spirit root, so cultivation will be a steep climb. Take it one step at a time. The Moon Sect is one of the 4 great powers. Their standards are brutal. If you don't make it, don't let it break your spirit. I'll remember that, I promised. He waved me off. Fine, fine. You know what you're doing. Get out of here. Let an old man have some peace. Wow, I joked. Kicking your grandson out already? He looked at me with total disdain. You can't even drink. Why stay? What? You little brat. Are you waiting for me to give you travel money? I grinned. Heh. His eyes widened. You actually admitted it. Get out. Scram. Fine. Fine. No need to yell. I muttered, shrinking back. I turned and started walking through the fallen leaves toward the gate. Just as I stepped through the door, he called my name. I turned around. A deep blue ring flew through the air in a perfect arc, landing right in my hands. Spend it wisely, he growled. Don't die out there. I'm still waiting for you to come back and take care of me in my old age. I gripped the ring tight. Don't worry. When I get back, I'll make my brother steal my father's best wine for you. The absolute best jar. Get lost, you useless brat. I laughed, but then I stood straight. Right there at the gate, I knelt and kowtowed to him once before closing the wooden door. The wind whistled through the alley, tossing yellow leaves into the lake. Long after my scent had faded from the courtyard, Lu Qingmu, the alchemist, finally opened his eyes. The furnace fire died out, leaving nothing but a pile of ash. Suchanga looked over and laughed. Uh-huh. You failed. You sat there with your eyes closed for so long, just to fail? Quite the act. Lu Qingmu's face twitched. If this old man wasn't already at death's door, he would have smacked him. He took a deep breath and looked toward the gate. That kid is strange, Lu Qingmu said quietly. Suchanga pushed a cup of wine toward him. Your cultivation might be trash, but your soul perception is sharp. A true alchemist. Old Su, I'm not joking. Suchanga's voice went flat and calm. I know what you're saying. My body is ruined, but my senses aren't. An 8th rank venerable in the initial stage. In this entire lower realm, there aren't many who could match him. Lu Qingmu stood up abruptly. But you said he's only 17. I checked him. His body's talent is garbage, yet he has that level of cultivation. What if he's some demon lord who took over his body? Suchanga shook his head. No, he's my grandson. What if he's an evil cultivator reincarnated? Still no. Then how do you explain his power? Suchanga set his cup down and looked Lu Qingmu dead in the eye. I'll say it one more time. He is my grandson. Lu Qingmu mumbled something under his breath and sat back down, silenced. Outside the courtyard, I held the blue ring up to the sunlight. It was a spatial ring, a high-grade one. It felt cool to the touch and had a subtle nourishing effect on the body. It was far better than the storage rings I'd looted from prodigies in my past lives. It seemed the old man had a glorious past of his own. It was a shame. My current physical state was a mess. My blood and chi were weak, and I barely had any cultivation strength left. However, with my past life experience, I could easily see through the two old men in the courtyard. The alchemist, Lu Qingmu, was only at the 7th stage. My grandfather, Suchanga, was even more strange. His body was like a leaking funnel. His spiritual energy reserves barely met the standard of the 2nd stage. Deep within his collapsed sea of chi, I sensed a lingering, eerie aura. This was likely the reason he had returned to the Su family 6 years ago, disheartened and broken. The old man never talked about his past. Whenever I asked, he would just stare blankly into the distance, offering no explanation. Once, my father, Su Zhengheng, tried to press him for answers. He got a brutal beating for his curiosity and only 4 phrases in return: no grudges, no resentment, no regrets, nothing to say. When my father didn't believe him, the old man kicked him again, declaring that his enemies were already dead. He told his rebellious son to drop his useless worries. I was 11 at the time, sitting under the eaves with a bowl of melon seeds, happily watching my father get thrashed. I snapped back to the present and slid the blue ring onto my index finger. I attached a sliver of my soul imprint to it, officially claiming ownership. When I sent my spiritual sense inside, I nearly jumped. The internal space was massive, thousands of cubic meters. Half of it was filled with mountains of spirit stones. In the corner stood 2 bookshelves holding about a dozen yellowed ancient texts. I flipped through them. Most were basic cultivation methods, low-tier martial arts, or records of creatures and secret scripts. My eyes landed on a tattered book in the back corner. It was worn down, clearly read 1,000 times over. I figured if the old man kept it so close, it had to contain some forbidden continental secret. I pulled it out with deep respect. The title was written in bold, gold letters, a comprehensive guide to demon girls of all tribes. I opened it and was instantly hooked. 10 minutes later, I had to tilt my head back toward the sky to keep the blood from leaking out of my nose. Now I knew why the other books were pristine while this one was falling apart. But why did the old man give this to me? Was this a legacy? Some kind of inheritance? I put the guide back on the shelf and sighed. I hadn't realized the old man was such a hidden tycoon and a man of such refined taste. Truly a free spirit. The sun was high now, and the smell of lunch wafted through the Su estate. I wandered through the winding paths until I reached my own courtyard. Standing at my gate was a figure in a flashy white robe. It was the quiet follower who had been trailing behind Situ Zhra earlier. I didn't have a bad impression of him. He'd been polite during the breakup, didn't glare at me, and didn't act like a brainless villain. "You're finally back," the young man said. He was leaning against my doorframe, clutching a sword, looking every bit the lonely, high-level swordsman. I waved at him. Waiting for me. Indeed. I have been waiting a long time. I straightened my posture. And what can I do for you? I am Yin Shu, the third prince of the great Yin Empire. I can see that, I remarked. You certainly look serious. Do not interrupt. Yin Shu's eyes turned cold, his hand tightening on his sword. I did not wish to speak with you, but before I left the mountain, my master told me I must sever all of junior sister Zhra's worldly attachments. I gasped. Holy crap! You killed her parents. Nonsense. Yin Shu's hand shook, and his sword unsheathed just an inch, gleaming with a deadly light. Hand over the engagement contract she gave you. Don't make me use force. I blinked. That contract was just a document proving I was a backup choice. The moment I'd walked out of the main hall, I'd used it to wipe the mud off my shoes and tossed it into a gutter. You want it? Go fish it out of the ditch yourself. Psycho, I muttered. I rolled my eyes and pushed past him into my yard. I looked over and saw Cheng Xiaohe sitting motionless under the old phoenix tree. A leaf covered his face, and his broom was tossed aside. My nose twitched. A faint scent of blood hit me. In an instant, a murderous intent exploded from my soul. The temperature in the courtyard plummeted. Did you do this? I turned to Yin Shu, my eyes turning ice cold. Yin Shu shivered. He looked like he was being stared down by a prehistoric beast. He went pale, his limbs freezing up, unable to make a sound. You're dead. I lunged forward, grabbing Yin Shu by the throat and lifting him off the ground. My grip tightened. I could hear his neck bones creaking under the pressure. His face turned a deep purple, and he looked like he was seeing ghosts. Young master? What are you doing? The atmosphere broke instantly. I turned my head. Xiaohe, who I thought was a corpse, was actually huddled under the tree, trembling and watching me commit a murder. He looked terrified that I was going to silence him next. You're not dead? I asked. Young master, should I be? I'd like to live a few more years, if that's okay. He quickly shut his eyes. I didn't see anything. This guy didn't attack you? Xiaohe swallowed hard, clutching his sleeve. Isn't he your friend? Wait, something was wrong. I definitely smelled blood. Oh, I forgot. I just had a massive nosebleed from reading that Demon Girl book. My bad. In my past life as a rogue cultivator, I had a habit of striking first and asking questions later. If you didn't kill the threat immediately, you didn't survive long enough to learn the truth. I forgot I wasn't in the lawless wilderness anymore. This was the Sioux estate, and I was the young master. I let go. Yin Shu hit the ground with a dull thud, gasping for air. I twitched, forcing an awkward but polite smile as I helped him up and brushed the dust off his robes. A misunderstanding. All a misunderstanding. Brother Yin, if you didn't do anything, why didn't you just say so? Why act so cold and silent? If you'd spoken up, I wouldn't have attacked you. It's really your fault for making me misunderstand a good person. Yin Shu looked at me like I was a demon. He wanted to scream. Did you even give me a chance to speak? I get beaten for nothing, and I have to apologize to you? I didn't notice his internal crisis. I picked up his fallen sword and handed it back. You're not hurt, are you? Tell me if anything feels off. I can treat you. Is it your neck? Your face is very red. Looks like a blood circulation issue. I have a bloodletting technique that works wonders. Yin Shu recoiled in horror, his bruised throat squeezing out a few desperate words. I'm not in pain. Great. If it doesn't hurt, you're fine. Hey, why don't you stay for lunch? Xiaohe, go tell the kitchen to whip up a few dishes. I shouted toward the house. Yin Shu started struggling immediately. No eating. I have things to do. I must take my leave. He looked terrified. He'd only been standing at my door for a few minutes, and I'd already nearly choked him to death. If he actually sat down to eat my food, he probably figured I'd be scattering his ashes by dessert. Yin Shu didn't even wait for me to hand back his sword. He scrambled to his feet and ran out of the courtyard, stumbling toward the guest quarters the Sioux family had arranged for his sect. The moment he got back, I bet he ordered the execution of whatever spy had gathered intelligence on me. That idiot spy had probably sworn up and down that the young master engaged to Siduja was a useless waste who couldn't cultivate. A useless waste? I'd just suppressed a spirit concentration cultivator with pure pressure. In Yin Shu's mind, I was officially more terrifying than my father. Back in the courtyard, Xiaohe was crouching under a tree, clutching her broom, and giggling behind her hand. She'd finally pieced together what happened. Seeing me stand up for her like that actually made her heart flutter. She thought I looked a bit cool. She even started thinking that maybe, just maybe, warming my bed wouldn't be the worst fate in the world. Her face turned a deep shade of crimson. I turned around and glared at her. Laughing? What are you laughing at? This is all your fault. No lunch for you today. You're going to pull up a chair and watch me eat. Bah, she huffed, her romantic thoughts vanishing instantly. Young master is ugly and a pervert. I'd rather warm a dog's bed than yours. After lunch, I decided to fully embrace the life of a pampered rich heir. I lay back in a wicker chair that creaked rhythmically as I rocked. I squinted against the thin sunlight, feeling lazy and content. Young master, is this okay? Xiaohe asked, her voice trembling. Harder, I grunted. Don't stop. I'm not feeling it yet. I can't anymore, young master. I bared my teeth in a mock villainous grin. If you can't, you'd better make it happen. Keep moving, or I'll dock your pay and throw you out of the estate. She whimpered, but kept going for another 20 minutes. Finally, I patted her hand and sighed with feigned disappointment. Useless. You're pretty, but you can't even massage a shoulder right. So weak. I'm a girl. I'm supposed to be soft. Bold. Talking back to your master? That's 3 days' pay gone. Xiaohe opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked small and helpless. She'd spent the whole afternoon massaging my shoulders until her hands were numb, only to get scolded. She realized rich young masters were heartless. I was already talking about throwing her out, and we hadn't even played yet. If I ever got bored for real, she'd be doomed. I stretched my limbs, feeling the blood flowing again, and reached out to pinch her soft cheek. I'm heading out. Clean up the yard. Oh, she muttered. I slipped out of the Sioux estate quietly, wearing a simple black robe. I blended into the bustling crowds of Black Iron City, walking toward the civilian district on the other side of town. At the entrance to the slums stood two of the most profitable buildings in the world, the Qingxi Pavilion and the Hongyun Court. One dealt in flesh, the other in gambling. One ruined your body, the other ruined your life. For the poor struggling to survive, these were places of pure evil. I looked away and stopped at a fruit stall, buying a large bag of assorted fruits. Then I hit up a Suwon snack shop for a bag of candy. Finally, I wandered into a narrow alley toward a dilapidated house. Black Iron City was wealthy because of its iron mines, but every prosperous city has corners the light doesn't reach. This was the home of the Chung family, the absolute bottom of the social ladder. The father had been the breadwinner until a hunting accident cost him both his legs. The mother was sickly, clinging to life with cheap, bitter medicine. There were two elderly grandparents who were losing their minds, and a 6-year-old girl who did what chores she could. The entire burden of this 6-person family rested on the shoulders of a 16-year-old maid, Chung Xiaohe. My father, Su Jingheng, might hate me, but he wasn't a bad city lord. He made sure the Sioux estate hired people from desperate families and paid them well above market rate. Xiaohe's job, cleaning a waste, young master's courtyard, paid enough to keep her family fed and buy her mother's medicine. But her mother's illness was getting worse. A real cure cost an astronomical amount. Xiaohe had even considered selling herself to the Qingxi Pavilion. But while she was cute, she wasn't a world-class beauty, and she didn't know how to dance or play instruments. The brothel offered her less for her entire life than the Su family paid her in 2 months. That's why she was so obsessed with money. That's why she'd taken my bet for 10 times her salary and lost herself to me. I knocked on the rickety door. Who is it? A little voice chirped. A young girl with pigtails peeked through a hole in the door. She saw me smiling with my 2 big bags. Who are you? Ba. I joked, putting my hands together. I am a monk from the east. Whoa, Dad. Mom. Look, a bald monk. Hey, brat, open up, I snapped. I'm a friend of your sister's. I don't believe you. Bad guys always say that. You're wearing black and carrying a big sack. You look like a kidnapper. I sighed. Not even Sidhu Jirua had managed to make me this speechless. This kid did it twice in a minute. Open the door. I really know Xiaohe. It took me reciting Xiaohe's name, her job, and even her exact height before the suspicious brat finally let me in. The house was cramped. Xiaohe's mother scrambled to find a way to host me, eventually washing the fruit I'd brought to serve back to me with an embarrassed smile. The two grandparents sat in the main room, staring blankly and tracing the lines on each other's hands. Xiao's father was a dark-skinned, sturdy man. Since he couldn't move, he leaned against the raised bed stove, giving me a kind but bitter smile. He probably thought I was some rich kid who liked his daughter, but he looked worried that their poverty would eventually make me despise her. As he watched me, I watched him. I noticed the jagged scars on his forehead. They weren't from the hunting accident. They were the kind of scars you get from slamming your own head against a wall in total despair. It was hard to imagine the pain of a family's backbone suddenly snapping, turning him into a burden instead of a provider. I looked at Qing Xiao's father. I could tell he had tried to end his life to stop being a burden to his family. But then he had heard his youngest daughter crying and his wife begging, and his courage had simply vanished. Humans are complicated like that. Death isn't the scary part. It's the things you aren't ready to leave behind. Big brother. The little girl piped up, looking at me with big eyes. Are you really my sister's friend? She never mentioned you. Eat your candy, I said, popping a piece into her mouth to shut her up. I don't like talking to you. I gave her little pigtails a playful tug and looked up at her father. I gave him the warmest, most genuine smile I could muster. Uncle Chung, I'm here to help. I stayed until sunset. When I finally crawled out of that cramped alleyway, I waved goodbye to the Chung family. I had left them a sum of money. It wasn't enough to make them rich overnight, but it was exactly what they needed to solve every problem they were facing. I had insisted it was a loan, not a gift, even making the father sign a promissory note. He knew it was charity, but he didn't have the heart to refuse. In a situation like that, acting tough and refusing help isn't pride or backbone. It's pure selfishness. To let your daughter sell herself, let your wife die of illness, and let your youngest child live in the shadows just to save your own face? That's not dignity. By the time I left, the little girl had finally decided I was handsome, mostly because I kept feeding her candy. Her parents stood in the doorway, watching me until I disappeared into the crowds. Night fell. Back at the Su family estate, Chung Xiaoha had scrubbed herself clean and bundled up tight. She was crouching under the eaves of my porch, looking like a nervous kitten waiting to be picked up. She had been waiting for 2 hours. She was so tense, she was practically falling asleep on her feet. Where is that perverted young master? She muttered to herself. Does he want his bed warmed or not? Fine. You didn't come back. I'm leaving. I'm going home. She stood up and started jogging toward the gate, but then her face fell. If I run away, will he be mad? What if he hits me? I heard rich boys like using whips. If he gets angry and kicks me out of the Su estate, what will I do? Ugh, life is so hard. She hugged herself and crouched back down by the door, staring at the stone path leading to the main gates. A few minutes later, Auntie Lu, the woman who cleared the trash, walked by. Xiaoha, are you pretending to be a stone lion statue? No, Auntie Lu. I'm waiting for the young master. Oh, is your little heart fluttering for him? Xiaoha turned bright red. Whether her heart was fluttering or not, she felt like she was trapped tonight. But Auntie Lu's next words made her eyes go wide. Don't bother waiting. I just passed by the old master's place. They said young Master Su left for a long journey. He won't be back for a while. What? No. Don't know me. Get home before they lock the main gates. Xiaoha didn't even remember how she got home. The security in Black Iron City was good, mostly because anyone who caused trouble ended up as a corpse hanging from the city walls, so she made it back safely. But even when she reached her house, she just sat at the doorstep, afraid to go inside. She was confused and heartbroken. She thought maybe I hadn't liked her massage earlier and decided to fire her. She could almost hear the manager telling her tomorrow that she wasn't needed anymore. Rich boys are so heartless, she sobbed. Sister, why are you crying out here? A little head with pigtails poked out of the door. The younger sister patted Xiaoha's shoulder. Don't cry. I'll give you a candy. She shoved a sweet treat into Xiaoha's mouth. Xiaoha wiped her tears and stared at the kid. Where did you get this? My future husband gave it to me. Xiaoha froze. You're 7. Mom and Dad engaged you already. No, not them. I picked him myself. It was young Master Su. He came by today. He said he was here for you, but I think he was lying. He kept pulling my pigtails. A girl at school said if a boy pulls your hair, he likes you. So he clearly likes me. Xiaoha's mind went blank. That perverted young master had actually gone to her house. She bolted inside, then suddenly stopped, turned around, and gave her little sister a massive flick on the forehead. Before the kid could react, she flicked her again, snatched the rest of the candy from her pockets, and ran into the house. A loud wail erupted from the doorway. Inside, Xiaohe listened to her mother explain everything that had happened during the day. The two of them held each other and cried. Her father listened to them sobbing and heard the little one screaming outside, and for the first time, he felt like there was a reason to keep living. Xiaohe eventually cried herself to sleep. The moment the weight was lifted off her shoulders, the exhaustion hit her like a truck. Next time the master comes back, she thought as she drifted off, I'll definitely warm his bed. Meanwhile, miles away, I let out a massive sneeze. That sneeze woke up a 3-meter-tall striped demon tiger nearby. It shook its head, its eyes locking onto me. I didn't bother hiding anymore. I pulled out a dagger and faced the beast, which was still licking its chops from its last meal. "Found you," I whispered. "You're the one who killed me in my second life." The tiger roared, its breath chilling the air and kicking up dust. It was a rank 3 beast, roughly as strong as that guy I'd scared earlier today. I, on the other hand, had the power of a rank 9. This wasn't even a fair fight. Killing it normally wouldn't give me any satisfaction. I decided to get fancy. I wanted to defeat it using the exact same move that had failed me centuries ago, just to give my past self some peace of mind. I started to pray to my own soul for protection. Then I realized how weird that was. Wait, if I'm the one who died, who exactly am I praying to? Whatever. I decided not to overthink the details. It was time to move. I gripped the dagger, spinning it in my palm until it was a blur of steel. I lunged forward, timing my strike perfectly. The tiger leaped, its massive shadow looming over me. This was it. I leaned back, sliding across the grass in a perfect shovel slide, aiming to gut it from chin to tail as I passed underneath. But the beast didn't follow the script. Mid-air, it somehow defied physics and killed its momentum. It dropped straight down, pinning its head to the ground and opening its maw wide. My heart skipped a beat. Instead of sliding under its belly, I was sliding directly into its throat. Crunch. Its massive fangs clamped down on my waist. 3 thoughts flashed through my mind in an instant. First, Newton is rolling in his grave. How does a 300-pound tiger have zero inertia? Second, whoever wrote that online guide saying a shovel slide can kill a tiger is a liar. I'm an immortal venerable, and even I couldn't pull it off. Third, you started this, you overgrown house cat. I didn't hold back. I condensed a massive sphere of spiritual energy and detonated it right in its face. 1 second, the tiger was probably congratulating itself on a free meal. The next, its soul was halfway to the afterlife. I stood up and checked my waist. My clothes were shredded, a row of jagged holes showing where the teeth had sunk in, but my skin wasn't even scratched. The tiger's move was flashy, sure, but it couldn't bypass my actual cultivation level. Thank God I'd kept my save file from my previous lives. I gave the carcass a spiteful kick and reached down to grab a circular waist pendant the beast had been carrying. I wiped the blood off on its fur and tossed it into my spatial ring. 1 down. I turned toward the eastern woods. I had a date with a snake. Usually, serpents love damp, dark swamps, but there are always weirdos in the animal kingdom. Some like sunbathing in deserts or soaking in lava. It took me another half-hour of trekking up a sun-drenched slope to find the cave that had haunted my dreams for centuries. I stopped at the entrance, staring at the field of pale blue flowers surrounding it. In my first life, I was just a regular guy with no worldly knowledge. I died thinking these were just pretty wildflowers. Now I realized how wrong I was. These were moondew chrysanthemums, a rank 2 spiritual medicine. In Black Iron City, 5 of these could buy you a girl like Xiaohe without even haggling. Being a man who appreciates a good bargain, I didn't just pick them. I used my spiritual energy to slice a 5-meter-deep chunk of the entire hillside, dirt, rocks, and all, and shoved the whole thing into my spatial ring. Satisfied with my loot, I ducked into the cool, mossy interior of the cave. A faint, fishy stench wafted from the depths, making me quicken my pace. After a few dozen steps, the glow of some luminous grass revealed the underground pool where I had met my end in my first life. In the center of the pool stood a stone pillar marked with 8 deep, jagged scars. Coiled around it was a 20-meter-long snake with purple scales and a black underbelly. It stared at me with cold, slit pupils, watching the intruder who had dared to enter its lair with a sword in hand. I hissed under my breath. A rank 5 beast. The world I live in is a mix of the mundane and the divine, but true cultivators are rare, less than 5% of the population. Most of them never make it past the initial body refining stage. The path goes from body refining to foundation building, then spirit focus and mortal shedding. Beyond that lie the immortal realms, ascension, earth immortal, heaven immortal, and so on, all the way up to immortal emperor. My father, Su Jingheng, was a big fish in a small pond at the mortal shedding stage. But a rank 5 beast? That's equivalent to a powerhouse who has reached the ascension stage. What was a monster like this doing in a tiny forest 100 miles from a backwater town? With its strength, it should have been out making a name for itself, not napping in a hole. At rank 5, it should have been as smart as a human. But as I watched it, the purple-scaled snake just stared at me like an idiot. Is there such a thing as a mentally challenged spirit beast? I muttered. I released a tiny ripple of my true power, just a taste of the ascension realm. The snake's massive body shivered, but it didn't move. It didn't attack, and it didn't flee. It just kept staring. I felt a surge of annoyance. I died to this thing. It was like the old story of the farmer waiting by a stump for a rabbit to run into it and die. In my first life, I was the stupid rabbit. I drew my blade and stepped toward the pool. It was time for some long-overdue revenge. But as I got closer, the snake finally moved. Its scales shimmered with an eerie, dark light. It opened its mouth, but instead of striking at me, it bit its own tail and began to swallow it, forming a perfect circle. An Ouroboros. A flash of realization hit me, but before I could process it, the snake vanished into the water. The pool erupted. The water rose into the air, shaping itself into a massive, translucent serpent head. It looked down at me, and for a split second, even with my immortal venerable strength, I felt like an ant looking up at the sky. The watery maw snapped shut, swallowing me whole. Everything went black. When the light returned, I wasn't in the cave anymore. I was standing in front of a massive metal gate. Carved into the surface was a giant silver Ouroboros, its eyes glowing with a crimson, bloody light. Step forward, a voice echoed. "Who are you?" I demanded. I felt my spiritual energy surging, ready to unleash my strongest strike at a moment's notice. We stood in a tense standoff for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the silver snake seemed to lose its patience. I said, "Step the hell forward." The red eyes flashed. In an instant, I felt my strength vanish. My cultivation, my power, everything was sucked out of me. I was back to being that ordinary, powerless guy from my first life. An invisible hand grabbed me, dragged me forward, and slammed my palm onto a stone pedestal in front of the gate. A series of words appeared in the air. Energy level, 9.3 potential, 0 rating, 13 result, fail, asterisk status, and incompetent. Trash, garbage, asterisk. I stared at the floating text, my jaw dropping. "Are you serious right now? You're actually insulting me." I yelled at the gate. "Who do you think you are? Come out and fight me. I've survived 9 lives. If there's one thing I'm an expert at, it's winning a shouting match." The silver snake actually seemed to go silent, as if it was genuinely stunned by my audacity. The silence stretched between us for what felt like an eternity. When the voice finally spoke again, the emotion was gone, replaced by that same cold, flat tone. 5 years, it said. Fail. Die. I didn't back down. You think you're tough? You think you can just... Before I could finish my insult, I felt a massive shove against my chest. I stumbled back, my boots skidding on stone. When I looked up, the massive metal gate was gone. The silver snake was gone. I was back in the original cave, standing by the edge of the dark pool. The purple-striped, black-bellied snake was there, though. It was coiled in the water, staring at me with its big, stupid eyes. I clenched my fists. My strength had returned. The power of an immortal venerable surged through my veins once again, but something was different. I looked down at my right hand. A silver ring shaped like an Ouroboros was wrapped tightly around my middle finger. Its crimson eyes were dull now, as if it had used up every drop of its energy. I frowned and sent a tiny wisp of spiritual energy into the ring. Immediately, a message flashed in my mind. Energy level, 9.3. Potential, 0. Rating, 13. Potential upgrade, Enlightenment Tablet, Mount Tingyun. I stared at the words. What did this even mean? Was I qualified now? Was the ring a key? A legacy? It mentioned escape, but escape from what? I thought back to that massive metal door embedded in the mountain. Was this ring the key to opening it? And what was behind that door? Was the ring telling me to run away, or was it asking me to help whatever was trapped inside escape? I tried to pull the ring off, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like it had fused with my bone. Fine, I muttered, sitting down by the pool to think. My instincts from my first life hadn't lied to me. This cave held a massive opportunity. That idiot snake was just the first test. In my first life, I had wandered in as a regular guy and died instantly. This time, I came back with the power of an immortal venerable and triggered the second test. But I still failed. Potential level 0 had to be a comment on this body. Even though I had my past life cultivation, I hadn't inherited my past life's talent or bone structure. In terms of raw potential, I was still trash. An immortal venerable level piece of trash. If I didn't find a way to upgrade my roots and talent, I'd be stuck at this level forever. I'd never grow stronger, and I'd never get revenge for the life I lost. Most importantly, I needed to find out who sent that assassin to lure me into that witch's territory in my previous life. Someone had framed me, an honest man, and I wanted blood. I shook my head to clear my thoughts. I was getting ahead of myself. I looked at the stupid snake sitting in the water and slapped it across the head. Since this thing was apparently the key to the secret realm behind the gate, I couldn't kill it. But I could definitely beat it up. The snake looked stunned. I slapped it again. Smack. Mount Tingyun, huh? I mused. It's not far from the capital of the Great Yin Empire. I'll go there for the Enlightenment Tablet, then stop by the Yin sect on the way back. I sighed, giving the snake one last slap for good measure. I thought I had the invincible protagonist script this time. So why did my life keep getting more complicated? Life is never easy. Luo City sat on the edge of the Great Yin Empire, a massive border fortress nestled against the Tsangxing mountain range. To the east was the sea, to the north were the ice plains, and to the south was the Dao Kingdom. The mountain range itself was a death trap filled with high-level demon kings, but it was also a gold mine of spiritual herbs and rare minerals. Where there's profit, there are people. About 50 miles outside the city walls, a campfire crackled in the wilderness. 5 young people, 2 men and 3 women, sat around the flames. Nearby, the butchered carcass of a rank 2 forest horned bull lay in the dirt. Brother Yin, one of the young men said, breaking the silence. You only spent half a day in Black Iron City. Why have you been acting like you lost your soul since we left? And where's your sword? The speaker was Luo Yuanha, the son of the Luo City Lord. He was a powerful cultivator, nearly at the 3rd stage of the condensed spirit realm. The man he was talking to was Yin Shu, the 3rd prince of the Great Yin Empire. Yin Shu didn't look up. He picked up a piece of dry wood and tossed it listlessly into the fire. His eyes were red and unfocused. My sword is gone, Yin Shu whispered. Gone. Luo Yuanha blinked. That was a grade 4 spiritual treasure. You told us just a few days ago it was a coming-of-age gift from your father. A gift, yes, Yin Shu said, covering his face with trembling hands. I was incompetent. Situ Zhirua, sitting across from him, watched him with a confused frown. They were supposed to stay in Black Iron City for the night, but Yin Shu had disappeared for a few hours yesterday at noon. When he came back, he looked like a broken man. He wouldn't say what happened. He just demanded they leave immediately. Luo Yuanha saw the tension and glanced at the 2 other girls, hoping they could lighten the mood. One was his sister, Luo Xin. She was talented but arrogant, and right now, she was staring at Yin Shu with hearts in her eyes. She thought his brooding look was incredibly romantic. She didn't think much of Situ Zhirua, just some girl from a small town who got lucky with a royal engagement. The other girl, Chao Yi, was the daughter of a wealthy merchant. She was much smarter. She didn't push Yin Shu for answers. Instead, she seasoned some roasted beef and passed it around. Sister Situ, please, have something to eat, Chao Yi said gently, handing a portion to Situ Zhirua. Thank you, Situ Zhuo replied. The two girls started chatting about minor cultivation tips, carefully avoiding anything personal. Luo Yuanhe watched them, then looked at his sister, who was still staring at Yin Shu while chewing her meat. He sighed. He used to think his sister was cute, but compared to Chao Yi's Grace, she just looked like a fanatical brat. He shook his head, trying to let the awkwardness of the missing sword fade into the night. To pass the time, I started thinking about some of the strange rumors and events happening back in Luo City. There was one story in particular that had caught my interest recently. Luo Yuanhe handed a piece of roasted beef to Yin Shu. Brother Yin, he started, his voice casual. You're a top student at the Heavenly Cold Palace. Tell me, does your sect have any techniques for taming beasts? Yin Shu's voice was still heavy and muffled. We do, but most of those methods are useless. You have to start training the spirit beasts when they're still cubs. The only place that knows how to control an adult beast is Thousand Beast Island, and they keep those secrets guarded tightly. Brother Yin is too modest, Luo Yuanhe said, leaning in closer. Most spirit beasts are naturally violent. Being able to tame a cub is already an incredible feat. He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, right in Yin Shu's ear. Brother Yin, come to my tent at the 5th watch tonight. I have a golden opportunity to share with you. What do you say? What kind of opportunity? Yin Shu asked. I've got some good stuff in my tent. It's not convenient to talk about it out here. Just come by later and you'll see. I noticed Yin Shu's posture stiffen. He shot Luo Yuanhe a suspicious look and actually scooted his seat a few inches away. What is so secret that you can't say it here? There are no outsiders. Just speak plainly. Do you think Miss Chao Yi is an outsider? Or do you think junior sister Situ is going to steal this opportunity from you? Luo Yuanhe stared at Yin Shu, his mouth hanging open. He hadn't expected the guy to shout it out for everyone to hear. I saw Situ Zhuo give him a cold, piercing glare. His own sister, Luo Xin, was scowling at him too. Only Chao Yi remained calm, her expression unchanged. Luo Yuanhe looked like he wanted to slap himself. I realized he probably thought Yin Shu's emotional intelligence was even lower than his sister's. If Yin Shu wasn't a prince who had been sent away to a sect at a young age, his half-brothers probably would have killed him years ago for being this dense. Fine, Luo Yuanhe muttered, trying to save face. He tossed a few more dry logs onto the fire, the flames crackling and spitting as they caught the oil. He cleared his throat and straightened up. This news came from my father this morning. In all of Luo City, fewer than 5 people know about it. It involves a demon king from deep within the hidden Star Mountains. The group went silent instantly. Every eye was fixed on Luo Yuanhe. The only sound was the soft popping of the burning wood. Luo Yuanhe looked satisfied with the reaction. He knew as well as I did how terrifying a demon king was. In the hidden Star Mountains, a spirit beast had to be at least the 8th rank before it could claim territory and call itself a king. Even in a place as powerful as the Heavenly Cold Palace, there were very few experts who could actually go toe-to-toe with one. About half a month ago, Luo Yuanhe continued, there was a massive disturbance deep in the mountains. The nearest human holy land, Tingyun Mountain, was worried it would trigger a beast tide. They sent a hidden expert, a true immortal, to investigate. My father met with that expert last night. He paused for effect. The chaos was caused by a territorial war between 2 kings, the Redwood Crow King and the Howling Moon Wolf King. It was a brutal race war. While the fighting was at its peak, an expert from the Lu Yunbei clan managed to sneak into the Crow King's nest. They slaughtered almost all of the king's mates and offspring. He leaned forward, the firelight dancing in his eyes. Only the youngest crow cub survived. It was out wandering and playing when the massacre happened. When the Wolf King found out, he was terrified the Crow King would go suicidal and take him down with him. He actually pulled his army back hundreds of miles and declared a truce. Now, they've teamed up to hunt down the Lu Yunbei clan. Meanwhile, the Crow King has sent out every subordinate he has to find his last remaining child. Luo Yuanhe took a long drink from his water skin, letting the weight of the story sink in. He looked at Situ Zhuo and the others, then dropped the bombshell. Care to guess where that Redwood Crow cub is right now? Yin Shu's breathing turned shallow. You don't mean? Exactly what you're thinking, Luo Yuanhe grinned. My father didn't think much of it at first, but during lunch, he remembered something. 2 evenings ago, a group of beast hunters was attacked by a strange creature. Several people died. The survivors said it was a pitch-black beast about half the height of a man, with blood-red eyes. It was small, but it already had the strength of a third-rank beast. Small, black skin, red eyes, and third-rank power. Everything pointed to it being the Crow King's cub. I watched Xiao Yi. She looked at Luo Yuanhe and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible sigh. She knew what this meant. An 8th-rank Demon King's cub was a massive prize. Even if its talent was poor, it would naturally grow to the 5th rank. With the right resources, it could reach the 6th or even 7th rank. Having a beast like that was like having a personal bodyguard as strong as the emperor of the Great Yin dynasty. But I also saw why the Lord of Luo City had given up on it. Finding the cub wasn't the hard part. The hard part was the bloodline connection. The Crow King would eventually track his child down. For a place like Luo City, that would be a death sentence. Taking the cub and running was an even bigger gamble. Luo Yuanhe's father was a smart man. He didn't want to risk his position for an uncertain future. Instead, he was handing the hot potato to Yen Shu. Yen Shu wasn't just a prince. He was a disciple of the Heavenly Cold Palace. If he took the cub back to his sect, even a demon king wouldn't dare cause trouble in a place guarded by immortals. The Crow King would just have to swallow his anger and find a new mate. Luo Yuanhe ignored everyone else and focused on Yen Shu's reddening eyes. So, Brother Yen, is this opportunity big enough for you? Yen Shu wasn't a total idiot. He understood the game being played. He cupped his hands toward Luo Yuanhe in a gesture of deep respect. The Yin family will remember this favor from the Luo family. Where's the cub now? Lead the way, Brother Luo, Yen Shu said, his voice filled with anticipation. Luo Yuanhe laughed and gestured for us to follow him. As we walked, I noticed Xiao Yi's eyes flickering with realization. It was obvious now. The Lord of Luo City hadn't just found the cub's location. He had already captured it and tucked it away in a secret spot, waiting for the perfect moment to hand it over to the prince. This whole camping trip was a calculated move to secure the royal family's backing. We extinguished the campfire and slipped into the dark forest. We weren't far from the city, staying on the very edge of the Sangxing mountain range. The monsters here were weak, and with Yen Shu being a 3rd-rank cultivator and an elder from the Sidu family lurking in the shadows, we were perfectly safe. Or so they thought. We reached a hidden valley within minutes. Luo Yuanhe turned back to say something to Yen Shu, but he stopped mid-sentence. A strange, savory aroma hit our noses. It smelled like barbecue. Luo Yuanhe's face went pale. The defensive array he'd set up at the valley entrance had been smashed to pieces. He sprinted inside, and I followed close behind. In the narrow depths of the valley, a small fire flickered. A dark, soot-covered figure sat by the flames. And on a spit over the fire sat a small, gutted beast. It was the red dragon cub. Luo Yuanhe started shaking. The shock hit him like a physical blow. He collapsed onto his backside, his eyes wide with horror. His entire plan, his family's future, and that priceless treasure were all literally going up in smoke. Yen Shu realized it a second later. He let out a primal roar and charged toward the fire. Stop! Get away from my beast! Whack! A sharp, crisp sound echoed through the valley. One moment, Yen Shu was flying through the air with the momentum of a freight train. The next, he was spinning like a top. He slammed into the dirt, face first. Damn it! What was that? Scared the life out of me, the dark figure grumbled. He picked up a torch and held it over the white-robed body on the ground. Then, he let out a short laugh. Oh, it's you, Brother Yen. We only saw each other yesterday, but I have to say, this new look is very unique. 15 minutes later, the atmosphere in the valley was beyond awkward. Xiao Yi and Luo Yuanhe sat by the fire, looking completely dazed. Next to them was Yen Shu, whose face was swollen like a purple pig's head. He sat with his head down, trembling. Brother Yen, what a coincidence, I said, grinning as I handed him a roasted leg. Small world, right? I wanted to buy you lunch earlier to apologize for the trouble, but you were in such a hurry. Well, better late than never. Try this. It's incredibly tender. Yen Shu didn't say a word. He just took the meat with shaking hands and started eating. Big, fat tears rolled down his cheeks. This was his destiny. His future 7th-rank partner. His ticket to the top of the empire. and it tasted delicious. It was the ultimate heartbreak. Luo Yuanhe watched me, gulping hard. He was furious that his father's hard work had been eaten, but he wasn't an idiot. He had just seen me slap a third-rank cultivator out of the sky like a fly. I was clearly much stronger than I looked. He sat there with his hands on his knees, acting like a disciplined schoolboy. Brother Yin, who is this? Luo Yuanhe whispered. Situ Zhuruo, who hadn't taken her eyes off me since we arrived, answered for him. He is the eldest son of the Su family from Black Iron City. Su Huai. Su Huai. Luo Yuanhe's sister, Luo Xian, jumped up and pointed a finger at me. You mean the trash who got his engagement cancelled? That's Su Huai. Trash? Cancelled? Chao Yi looked at the swollen-faced prince and then at me, unable to connect those words with the man who just dominated the scene. Luo Yuanhe immediately grabbed his sister's hand and forced it down, hissing at her to shut up. He knew better than to insult someone who handed out mid-air slaps for fun. Situ Zhuruo stepped forward, her expression softening into something like pity. Su Huai, you've worked hard. I stopped chewing on a rib and blinked at her. Hard? Not really. The fire did most of the work. She shook her head, her eyes turning watery and sentimental. It's okay. You don't have to hide it. Now that you've finally started your cultivation journey, you should come with me. Join the Heavenly Cold Palace. My master is a man who appreciates talent. Once he sees what you can do, he'll take you in. I stared at her. Was she serious? Talent? I don't have any of that. Besides, who in your sect is even qualified to teach me? The only two people worth my time there are the old emperor and the grand elder. The emperor has been in seclusion for a century, and the elder only cares about alchemy. I have no interest in being someone's test subject. No thanks, Miss Situ. I'm not going. Su Huai, please, don't let your pride get in the way, she pleaded. It's not pride, I said, wiping my hands. To be honest, I do plan on joining a sect. Just not yours. I'm heading to the Yanhua Immortal Sect in Chinhua Valley. Situ Zhuruo froze. Why would you go there? I leaned back and gave her a sharp grin. To pick up girls, obviously. I heard that sect has the most beautiful female cultivators in the entire realm. I'm planning to find myself a fairy to bring home as a wife. Situ Zhuruo opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. She had been the one to dump me, but hearing me talk about finding a new wife so casually felt like a different kind of slap. But what choice did I have back then? I was a genius, and he was a waste of space. We lived in two different worlds. Fairies don't date mortals. But now that he could cultivate, I had reached out, and he'd rejected me. Not only that, he was already planning to flirt with other fairies. How could a man change his mind so fast? Scumbag. The atmosphere at the fire became heavy. Situ Zhuruo looked miserable. Yansu was too scared to speak. Luo Yuanhe stayed silent, and his sister Luo Xian was throwing a tantrum, refusing to look at me. Only Chao Yi seemed to understand exactly what was happening. She watched us all with eyes as clear as a mirror. Mr. Su, she said softly. My name is Chao Yi. I turned to her. Oh, hello, Miss Chao. She wore a simple, light green dress. Compared to Luo Xian, she wore almost no jewelry. But the single pendant hanging from her neck was worth more than everything Luo Xian owned combined. It was a grade 3 beast core, a rare ice and fire dual attribute core. I had assumed she was the cold, silent type since she hadn't spoken until now. I didn't expect her to strike up a conversation. Chao Yi noticed my gaze drifting toward her neck and collarbone, but she didn't seem offended. She was an expert in psychology. She could tell my eyes held no lust. I was simply analyzing the beast core. Mr. Su, you mentioned joining the Yanhua Immortal Sect, she said. I assume you're heading to the Imperial Capital for the Great Festival next month. Yeah, I replied. It's the only official way in. Is there an unofficial way? She asked, tilting her head. Sure. I could find the elder in charge of recruitment, beat him up, and threaten to hang him from the city walls if he doesn't take me in. Chao Yi laughed softly. You're joking, Mr. Su. Am I? I thought it sounded like a solid plan. I was smiling, but my eyes remained cold. Chao Yi felt a shiver run down her spine. Her intuition told her I wasn't joking at all. She kept her composure, though. The festival is still a long way off, she continued. Do you have any plans before then? I tossed a bone aside and wiped my mouth, glancing at Situ Zhuruo. I didn't want her thinking I was following her. I'm making a stop at Mount Tingyun to see the Enlightenment tablet. Chao Yi's eyes brightened. It seems our paths overlap. Why don't we travel together? I'm also heading to Mount Tingyun to visit a family elder and test my talent for the festival. So, we're rivals then? I grinned. You're joking again, she smiled. You haven't answered my invitation. What do you say? I don't know, I said. Might be a hassle. Not at all. My family has businesses all along the route. Traveling with us would take care of all the tedious logistics. I shrugged. In that case, I'll be in your care. The honor is mine, Mr. Don't call me Mr. Su. It sounds too formal. Just Su Huai is fine. Then you can call me Chao Yi. Or, if you don't mind, you can use my nick. Actually, just my name is fine. Luo Yuanhe watched this exchange in disbelief. In just a few minutes, Chao Yi had executed a textbook social maneuver and secured a friendship with a high-potential cultivator. He looked at his own sister, who was busy trying to wipe Yin Su's swollen face while he pushed her away in annoyance. Luo Yuanhe wanted to cough up blood. Cultivation wasn't just about fighting, it was about networking. His sister was chasing a guy who hated her, while the Chao family was securing their future. Su Huai. Luo Yuanhe tried to speak, but he was cut off. Su Huai. Situ Zhirua shouted, her teeth clenched. Luo Yuanhe sighed. How rude. No wonder he dumped you. Situ Zhirua didn't care. She was staring at me, her heart a mess of conflicting emotions. She was the one who ended the engagement. She didn't even like me. But seeing me get along so well with Chao Yi made her blood boil. It was that classic, petty human instinct. You don't want the toy, but you hate seeing someone else play with it. What? I asked, looking at her. Why are you yelling? You crazy. Do you even know what you're eating? She hissed, pointing at the roasting meat. It's a black pig, I said casually. Why? Is its dad someone important? Like Li Gang. She blinked. Who is Li Gang? A very happy father, I muttered. Forget Li Gang, she snapped. I'm asking if you know the identity of this beast. I told you. It's a little black pig. Very crunchy. Situ Zhirua looked like she was about to explode. She stood up and pointed at the half-eaten carcass. That is a redwood demon. It's the offspring of a grade 8 demon king. Its last offspring. You've brought disaster upon yourself. Oh, I said, taking another bite. Is that why it tastes so good? You. Look, I interrupted. If you want some, sit down and eat. If you're too scared, go dig up some dirt to chew on. Just stop screaming while I'm trying to enjoy my meal. I knew exactly what I was eating. I'd felt the Demon King's aura on the pig the moment I saw it. But so what? Demon Kings don't care about their kids. They have dozens of them. Unless a child is a once-in-a-century genius, a Demon King won't blink if one dies. They only retaliate if their pride is hurt, like if someone kills a cub in their own lair or turns one into a mount. Eating a stray pig in the wild, the Demon King probably wouldn't even bother to look up. It's said that you can kill a man, but you shouldn't humiliate him. That was exactly what I was doing to Situ Zhirua. She stood there speechless, her hair practically shaking with rage. She couldn't understand how I could be so indifferent. This was a Demon King we were talking about. I didn't care. I patted my stomach, feeling full and satisfied, and looked at the group. Can someone give me directions? I asked. Luo Yuanhe finally found a chance to speak. Directions to where? Luo City, obviously. Oh, I know the way, he started. Brother Su, you just go. Let's go together, Su Huai. Chao Yi interrupted him, standing up. She had eaten quite a bit of my roasted pork, and her lips glistened with grease under the firelight. She stretched her arms, her shadow dancing against the trees in a distracting, curvaceous silhouette. I'm getting a bit tired myself. Brother Luo, Xiner, I hope you have a wonderful night with Prince Yin and Miss Situ. I'm taking Su Huai back to Luo City to rest. Yin Shu nodded in approval. Chao Yi didn't waste a second and turned to leave. I followed her, realizing she was done playing nice. She had already delivered the favor the Luo family wanted by revealing the location of the demon cub. With the imperial family's support now secured, the Luo family's position was unshakable. Luo City would never belong to her Chao family now. Since there was no point in competing for the city anymore, she wasn't going to waste her energy being polite to Luo Yuanhe. Besides, she had been used. Luo Yuanhe had dragged her out here just to witness him suck up to royalty. Why stay and watch him flirt with a prince while her family's interests were sidelined? She'd rather spend her time with me. Maybe she saw me as a mysterious youth from a small town, the kind of guy who was called trash but suddenly rose to power. She probably thought I had some destiny written all over me. As we walked away, Luo Yuanha sat by the fire, practically shivering with frustration. The Luo and Chao families were rivals, but their fathers were old friends, and he'd grown up with Chao Yi. He definitely had feelings for her. Watching her leave in the middle of the night to rest with another man was like a dagger to his heart. It was the ultimate "she's just a friend" nightmare coming true. He wiped a non-existent tear from his eye and looked at Situ Giroir, who was also staring at our retreating backs with gritted teeth. "Miss Situ," he sighed. "My condolences." Situ Giroir ignored him. She turned to the silent Yin Shu. "Senior brother, let's head back to the sect first thing tomorrow." "Agreed." Yin Shu nodded. Luo Yuanha blinked. "Wait, you're not going to Tingyun Mountain? What about the fog tablet?" "We don't need it," Yin Shu said coldly. "There are other ways to improve our talent at the Heavenly Cold Palace." "He's right," Situ Giroir added, her eyes cold. "Right now, I only care about the path of cultivation. I want to become an immortal. I want to make him regret everything." Luo Yuanha was confused. If she became an immortal, why would I regret it? Was she going to come back and hang my corpse from a tree? He didn't get it. "Brother Yin Shu, have an orange," Luo Xian interrupted, offering a piece of fruit she'd pulled from nowhere. She'd been staring at him the whole night. "No thanks," Yin Shu said. "Why not?" "It's too cold. I don't like cold oranges." "I can warm it up for you," she offered eagerly. "No, warm oranges are sour." "Oh." Luo Xian turned and tossed the orange into her brother's lap. "Luo Yuanha, you eat it then." Luo Yuanha clutched his chest. The pain was real now. His own sister was a lost cause, chasing a man who didn't want her. Meanwhile, Chao Yi and I were deep in the woods. The moonlight was swallowed by thick clouds. She held a glowing silver stone to light our path. We were about 5 miles from the city gates. Usually, carrying a light source in a dark forest is suicide. It's an invitation for predators to ambush you. But Chao Yi wasn't worried. She'd seen me slap Yin Shu. She knew I could handle whatever was lurking in the bushes. Suddenly, I stopped. "What is it?" she whispered, tilting her head. "Look up," I said. "Something's blocking the way." She raised the glowing stone. High up on a thick tree branch stood an old man in white robes. He was incredibly conspicuous against the darkness. His hands were tucked into his wide sleeves, and his eyes were narrowed. He had a massive, comical mole near the corner of his eye. "Young man of the Su family," the old man said. "You've gone too far." I sighed. "And who are you?" "I am Qin Shan, an attendant of the Heavenly Cold Palace." "The palace again?" I muttered. "Indeed," he said, swaying slightly on the branch. "Yin Shu is a top disciple. This is his first time traveling down the mountain in 10 years. The world is dangerous, so the sect leader sent me to protect him from the shadows." "Great. The kid had a bodyguard." "A bodyguard, huh?" I grinned up at him. "You don't seem very good at your job." "You're right," he admitted. "I am unsuited for this." Before we reached Black Iron City, I couldn't enter because of certain rules. No cultivator above the 4th rank is allowed inside. I paused. Black Iron City has a rule like that. My old man is only 4th rank. Who made that rule? Is there some hidden powerhouse in my family I don't know about? The old man chuckled. "Why else do you think the Su family can hold a spirit mine secret realm so close to the Star Mountains, where high-level beasts roam? You think Su Jingheng does it alone?" I tilted my head. "So, what's your point?" "I couldn't enter the city," he continued, "but I saw Yin Shu leave it looking like he'd lost his soul." Qin Shan claimed I had damaged Yin Shu's Dao heart. He seemed genuinely irritated that he couldn't figure out why until he saw me bullying the boy. I cut him off immediately. I wasn't bullying anyone. That slap was an accident. I told him as much, explaining that Yin Shu had lunged at me and I reacted out of pure self-defense. It was instinct. The old man didn't want to argue. He stepped into the air as if walking on solid ground and vanished. A second later, he was behind me. I felt a withered, cold hand grip my shoulder. A faint scent of medicinal herbs wafted from his white robes. Now that he was close, I got a good look at his face. It was horrifying. His skin was as pale as a corpse, stretched tight over his bones with almost no flesh underneath. Crimson runes were etched across his skin, and his sunken eyes glowed with a ghostly green light. Even that mole near his eye wasn't a mole at all. It was a dark brown medicinal fungus growing out of his flesh. Chowie screamed and fell back, terrified by his demonic appearance. I just narrowed my eyes. I recognized what he was. A medicine man. He chuckled, impressed that I knew the term. I told him that the heavenly cold palace must be rotting from the inside if they were using people like him. His expression shifted to surprise, but he didn't have time to respond. I grabbed his wrist. With a sharp crack, I snapped his arm like a dry branch. Before he could process the pain, I slammed a fist into his face. The impact sent his head crashing into the dirt. He wasn't finished. Green spiritual energy erupted from his body, forming a grotesque plant known as a corpse bone flower. It was a massive, hideous bloom with venom dripping from its center and petals lined with sharp, tooth-like thorns. It lunged for my head. I reached out to tear the thing apart, but the silver Ouroboros ring on my finger began to glow with a faint crimson light. It felt ice-cold against my skin. Suddenly, the ring transformed into a tiny silver snake. It shot off my finger and dove straight into the heart of the flower. The corpse bone flower began to thrash and writhe in the air like a dying animal. A moment later, it went limp, collapsing onto the old man's chest. The silver snake crawled back out, slid up my hand, and returned to its ring form on my middle finger. But it wasn't done. The snake's eyes glowed red. It unhinged its jaw, let go of its own tail, and bit me right on the finger. I almost cursed it out loud, but then I felt a surge of warm energy. It flowed from the bite, through my arm, and into my entire body. My meridians began to glow. It was an incredible sensation. Even my soul felt like it was cheering. A mental interface flickered in my mind. My strength was at 9.3. My potential, which had been a flat 0, had jumped to 2. My overall rating was now 13. The little snake told me it was tired and going to sleep. It warned me not to touch it and told me to wake it up when we reached the Tao Enlightenment Cup. Then, the red light in its eyes faded, and it went back to looking like a cheap piece of jewelry. I closed my eyes and checked my internal state. My dantian was no longer empty. A colorless spiritual root had appeared. It was small, but it was there. In the world of cultivation, the spiritual root is everything. Without one, you're a freak or a failure. With one, you have a future. I couldn't believe how easy it was this time. In my previous life, it took me until I was 20 to condense a grade 1 root, which was basically trash. I had to spend centuries and consume a mountain of pills just to reach grade 8. Now, I hadn't even been out of the house for a day, and I already had a grade 2 root. I looked down at the old man. He was dead. The corpse bone flower was dying too, since it no longer had a host to feed on. Being a medicine man is a foul process. Usually, evil cultivators plant seeds in infants and let the plant grow as the child matures, eventually killing them. The second way is what happened here, planting a medicinal seed directly into the heart of a powerful warrior to control them. It's fast and effective, but it costs one high-level cultivator per flower. I crossed my hands and offered a brief prayer for the old man. He had been a very generous donor, after all. His sacrifice had paved my way forward. If everyone in this world were as selfless as him, I'd be an immortal emperor in no time. Prayer finished, I reached into my spatial ring to see what else I could find. I pulled a small shovel from my ring and tossed it to Chowie. I nodded toward the old man's body. Here, Chowie, do me a favor. Help me bury this old guy. He was just walking along when he suddenly dropped dead of natural causes. Chowie swallowed hard, her eyes darting between me and the corpse. Natural causes? I literally watched you punch a hole through his chest. Can you at least try to make the excuse believable? The next morning, the first rays of dawn crept through the window of a small, cramped attic. This place was packed. Bookshelves lined every wall, overflowing with scrolls, stone rubbings, bamboo slips, and paper. In the center of the room sat a small, soft bed. Chowie was lying there, clutching a book, but the dark circles under her eyes told the real story. She hadn't slept a wink. Chowie was a decent cultivator, better than most geniuses people talked about, but she wasn't the type to seek out glory. She preferred the quiet company of her library to the violence of the outside world. Yet, last night, she had participated in something massive. She had spent nearly an hour in a dark forest with a man she'd known for less than 60 minutes, digging a hole and sweating over a shovel. She had spent the whole time looking over her shoulder, terrified someone would catch them. It felt scandalous. But more than that, it was surreal. We had buried a 5th-rank Immortal Ascension stage cultivator. That was the same level as the Emperor of the Great Yin Kingdom, a peak power she never dreamed of reaching. And yet, that powerhouse had been ended by a single, casual punch from a teenager with a smirk. There was no headstone, no ceremony. Just a small, nameless mound of dirt. Strangely, as she thought about that mound she had helped build, she felt a lingering spark of excitement. She closed her book. After a night of research, she finally understood what a medicine man was. She also knew the old man came from the heavenly cold palace, a place thousands of people worshipped as a sacred land of cultivation. Chao Yi tucked the research notes into the furthest corner of her shelf. She shook off her exhaustion and headed downstairs. The attic had 3 floors. The first was a living area and workshop, while the second had guest rooms. That's where I was staying. When she reached the bottom floor, she saw me hunched over a table, carefully cleaning the items from the night before. "Why are you messing with those?" she asked. "They're just common wildflowers. They aren't worth anything." I looked up and smiled. "To you, they're just weeds. But to some people, just seeing these would be enough to make them happy all night." Chao Yi didn't argue. She sat across from me, watching. It was hard to reconcile the boy who could crush a skull with one hand with the boy currently using a soft cotton cloth to gently wipe dirt off flower petals. I moved with focus, placing the stems into a vase filled with spiritual fluid. In the morning light, the scene looked almost peaceful. I finished the last white flower and set it down. I leaned back and looked her in the eye. "All right, tell me what's on your mind." She hesitated, looking down at her hands. "It's about last night. That medicine man. Is there something wrong with her?" "No," I replied. "She's just a victim. The problem is the heavenly cold palace. I heard her say she was sent by a peak master to protect Yin Su." Chao Yi whispered, stealing a glance at me. Seeing that I was listening intently, she found her courage. "I heard you mention the palace's name too. If you know they're evil, why don't you tell the other sects? Why let them keep up this facade of being a righteous, holy land while they lure in disciples to their deaths?" I rested my chin on my hand. "So that's what's bothering you?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I'm not trying to interrogate you. But you know the truth, yet you didn't even warn Yen Su or Situ Zhurua. I figured you must have some grand plan." I shook my head. "You guessed wrong. I don't have a plan at all." Chao Yi froze. I looked straight into her eyes. "Do you think I'm heartless?" "I didn't say." "You don't have to deny it," I interrupted. "You're a normal person, so feeling that way is natural. I know the heavenly cold palace is a slaughterhouse. I'm watching countless young people, full of dreams just like Situ Zhurua, rush into that place thinking it's paradise, only to die. To you, I look selfish and cold." I paused, looking out the window at the street below. "But Chao Yi, people are often powerless. Without enough status or fame, no one believes a word you say. Humans can be smart individually, but as a crowd, they become stubborn and stupid when their future is at stake. They cling to their dreams so tightly that they view anyone who questions them as an enemy." Chao Yi stayed silent, processing my words. "I once had a friend," I continued. "He found out the secret of the heavenly cold palace and felt exactly like you do. He was full of righteous fire. He ran to the capital of the Great Yin Kingdom to warn people. They looked at him with disgust. They told him to stop spreading lies or they'd break his legs and hang his corpse from the city gates. I watched the street vendors starting their day outside. The world was waking up, noisy and full of life. My voice remained flat. He realized he was a nobody, so he went to a righteous sect's elder. That elder was actually a good man. He didn't dismiss it. He reported it to his sect. They organized a secret investigation. At that point, my friend had done everything a person could possibly do. But the result was a failure. I turned back to her. The heavenly cold palace has fooled the world for centuries. They don't leave easy trails. The investigators found nothing. The matter was dropped. They didn't punish my friend, but they blacklisted him from every major sect. His future was deleted. I looked back at the flowers. Not long after that, a group of bandits, led by rogue cultivators, appeared. They wiped out several towns in that region. They didn't just kill people, they were monsters. Every man, woman, and child had their tongues cut out and their eyes gouged before they died. That was the price of speaking up. Even in death, those villagers were left as broken ghosts, unable to see, hear, or speak. And the worst part? Those towns were the exact places where my friend had first discovered the heavenly cold palace's secret. When light shines into an abyss, it exposes the filth and the rot. In the eyes of the powerful, that light is a crime. That friend I mentioned wasn't someone else. He was me. To be precise, he was me in my 6th life. Back then, even though I had died several times already, I still held on to a pure sense of justice. I wanted to be a hero. That justice ended up killing thousands of innocent people. I remember how it ended. The elders of the heavenly cold palace eventually tracked me down. They dragged me to a hidden alchemy chamber filled with human materials. I spent my final hours screaming as magical fire melted my flesh and bones. They didn't just kill me, they refined me. I died as a single, glowing pill. When I woke up in my 7th life, I didn't move. I sat on a bamboo chair in the Su family courtyard for a day and a night. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I just watched the food Qing Xiaohe brought me grow cold, then slowly turn sour. By my 8th life, I trained like a madman. My only goal was to break through to the immortal Emperor realm and burn the heavenly cold palace to the ground. Chao Yi sat on the sofa, her expression dim. She wasn't a fool. She was kind, yes, but she wasn't a brainless saint. Last night, when we found that old man who had been turned into a medicine man, she didn't beg me to save him. She knew he was beyond help. She had even helped me dig the hole to bury him. She looked at me, her voice heavy. I actually thought about joining them. Yin Shu said he could get me in through the back door with Luo Yuanhe. No entrance exam required. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with lingering shock. Do you think I should still go? I grinned at her. I don't know. Do you like having mushrooms growing out of your face? She shuddered. Forget it. She stood up, trying to shake off the gloom. Want to go for a walk? When I'm in a bad mood, I like to spend money. Lots of it. I'm broke, I admitted. Doesn't matter. Today is on me. We'll just put everything on my dad's tab. I felt a surge of energy and stood up instantly. Lead the way. We're leaving right now. Luo City lived up to its reputation. It wasn't as grand as the imperial capital, but for cultivation materials, it was the best in the Great Yin Kingdom. Chao Yi wasn't like other girls. She didn't care about makeup or fancy clothes. She bypassed the high-end boutiques and led me straight into a crowded market that smelled of iron and raw blood. This was where the rogue cultivators and mountain hunters sold their hauls from the Zhangxing Mountains. Most stalls were just a piece of tattered cloth on the ground. I stopped at a stall and bought a box of steaming hot poultry wings drenched in a spicy sauce. They came from a red chicken, a low-level spirit beast. These things are at the bottom of the food chain, gentle, stupid, and easy to catch. They're less dangerous than a common farm goose. But they have one incredible trait, extreme vitality. Their bloodline allows for limb regeneration. I watched the cook chop a wing off a live chicken, pluck it, and toss it into the pot right in front of the bird. The chicken squawked, its talent kicked in, and a new wing sprouted in less than 2 minutes. It was an infinite meat machine. I gave the cook a stern look, judging him for such cruelty. Then I ate 3 bowls. Meanwhile, Chao Yi was squatting in front of a middle-aged man in a straw raincoat. She picked up a half-meter-long crimson fish. How much for this? The man grinned. You've got a good eye, miss. This fire spirit fish is a wild king. The meat is perfect, and there's probably a core inside. I'll give it to you for 20 gold bars. Or 5 low-grade spirit stones. Fair price, no cheating. Chao Yi dropped the fish. That's a scam. A real grade 1 beast core only costs 7 spirit stones. This is just a fish with a bit of spirit blood. 5 stones. Are you joking? The man's eyes bulged. Just a fish? This is a 2-foot king. Uncle, Chao Yi said, her voice turning sharp. Spirit kings don't grow on trees. I was a big brother a second ago, now I'm an uncle? The man grumbled, realizing he'd met a pro. Fine. What's your offer? 1 silver coin. The man nearly jumped. 1 silver? Are you robbing me? My name is Chow Yi, she said calmly. My father is the head of the Chow Merchant Guild. If you don't sell it to me, I'll tell him you tried to extort me. He'll have your stall smashed by noon. I stared at her, my chicken wing frozen halfway to my mouth. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a shakedown. Even a Somali pirate would have bowed to her technique. The vendor looked at me, pleading for help. I slowly turned my back and took a bite of my wing. Don't look at me, buddy. I'm just the broke guy. The owner's shoulders slumped. He wiped a stray tear from his eye and gave a tragic smile. Fine. It's yours. Please, just don't come back. Of course, she didn't actually pay 1 silver. She wouldn't ruin her family's reputation over a fish. She gave him 2 gold bars, the actual market price. The vendor, who had started by trying to rob her, ended up thanking her profusely for the fair deal. I looked at her differently after that. She knew exactly how to play people. By the time the sun was high, Chow Yi was exhausted. Spending money had done its job. The shadows in her eyes had cleared. We headed back, and she tossed the ingredients to the villa's chef. She grabbed some old books she'd bought and headed up to the 3rd floor of our pavilion. A moment later, I heard the faint sound of running water from the bath upstairs. The little devil on my shoulder started whispering. But before I could even think about moving, I saw the little angel nearby, the one currently clutching a heavy alchemy furnace. I could have been slapped into the wall and stuck there like a poster, and I wouldn't have cared. I just sighed and slumped onto the sofa. I pulled out the book my grandfather had given me. It was titled An Evaluation of Different Monster Girls. I started studying the anatomy of these exotic races with the focus of a scholar. Cat ears, tiger tails, snake waists. I felt a warm trickle from my nose. Time drifted by. On my 3rd day in Luo City, Chow Yi finally knocked on my door. She blushed when she saw the goji berries floating in my thermos. She told me I needed to take care of my health, then said it was time to leave. Chow Yi had an obsession with books. Whenever she saw me buried in one, wiping blood from my nose, she got curious. She asked me why my nose kept bleeding. I told her the book was a cursed ancient scripture. I said the knowledge inside was forbidden, and every glance brought a heavy price. I even offered to lend it to her, provided she had a guardian present to prevent her from dying under the curse. She actually believed me. Before she touched it, she bathed, changed her clothes, and lit incense. She even brought her father along to protect her. She piously opened the leather-bound cover I'd made for it. Then, silence. She looked at the first page and sensed something was wrong. She flipped through dozens more, refusing to believe it. The curse took effect. Her father, a man nearly 50, tilted his head back as 2 streaks of deep crimson leaked from his nostrils. He immediately confiscated the book. Even though Chow Yi told him it was mine, he kept it for a full day. I don't know what happened during that day, but I heard he hired a team of master illustrators in Luo City that very afternoon. The journey from Luo City to Tingyun Mountain was long. On foot, it would take a normal person half a year. We chose to fly. The Chow family owned their own transport, a 4-winged slaughter eagle. It was a 2nd-rank beast with a 30-meter wingspan and a small wooden cabin built onto its back. Chow Yi's father was named Chow Yang. He was a man at the peak of the soul-calming realm, just 1 step away from the 4th rank. Unlike my own father, Su Jingheng, Chow Yang was a good man. He treated his daughter and son with equal love. Despite his busy schedule with the Merchant Guild, he insisted on accompanying us to the exams. He wanted to be there to celebrate her success or comfort her if she failed. I felt a pang of envy. In my original world, I was an orphan. In this one, my father only cared about my younger brother's talent. But my envy didn't last long. Once we were in the air, Chow Yang ushered Chow Yi into her room. He sat down with me, brewed a pot of high-grade Longjing tea, and started discussing the cursed book. He leaned in and whispered that when he was young, he'd secretly kept a 2nd-rank white spirit fox behind his wife's back. He'd raised it for years, dreaming of the day it would transform into a human woman. He claimed it wasn't about anything dirty. He just had a big heart for stray animals. He eventually found out beasts needed to reach the 6th rank to transform. Heartbroken, he gave the fox to Chow Yi's mother. The fox girl dream became the greatest regret of his youth, until he saw my book. Now, he was planning to scour the imperial capital for transformation pills, even if it cost him his entire fortune. I started blinking rapidly at him. Unfortunately, the old man lacked his daughter's intuition. He didn't get the hint. He even asked if the wind was blowing dust into my eyes. I gave him a helpless smile. I told him to look behind him. Chao Yang turned around and saw his daughter standing by the door with a chilling smile. His body stiffened. Suddenly, he started shouting at me. He lectured me about being young and needing to focus on my studies instead of thinking about cat girls and fox spirits. My smile faded. I'd spent a lifetime shifting blame onto others, and today, I was the one getting framed. If he weren't Chao Yi's father, I would have slapped him into the clouds. I blamed Yin Su for this. I added it to the list of reasons I hated that guy. Chao Yi wasn't a fool. She stood there and recorded every word of her father's youthful memories on a piece of paper. I finally learned the true meaning of the phrase, "Every word is worth 1,000 gold." She sold that single sheet of paper back to her father for exactly 1,000 gold bars. That kind of money could buy 50 servants like Chung Xiaohe back in Black Iron City. I could have built a maid army. But then I remembered Chung Xiaohe couldn't even massage a shoulder properly. Dominating the immortal world would have to wait. The four-winged slaughter eagle was fast. It easily covered 2,000 miles a day. 2 days passed without incident. We flew at a low altitude, avoiding the territory of larger aerial predators. Finally, the eagle folded its wings and landed at a small town at the foot of Tingyun Mountain. Everyone was happy, except for Chao Yang, who was down 1,000 gold. I stepped off the bird and looked up at the mountain. I'd been here many times in my past lives. A trace of nostalgia flickered in my eyes. For those with mediocre talent and empty pockets, Tingyun Mountain was the greatest holy land in the world. It wasn't because the sect there was powerful. In fact, their strongest member was only an immortal king. It was famous because of the Tao Enlightenment tablet at the summit. The tablet could improve a person's latent talent. The effect varied, but it was real. In other sects, such a resource would be hidden away, reserved only for elite disciples. Tingyun Mountain was different. They left the tablet open to the public. Man, woman, child, or even a beast. As long as you could breathe, you could sit and meditate before it. They gave the common people a chance to change their fate. That was why they were respected above all others. I had visited this holy land several times in my past lives. Each time, the results were disappointing. I didn't have the talent to make the most of it. But this time, things were different. I had the silver Ouroboros ring on my finger. As I rubbed the cold metal, the crimson eyes of the snake flickered, almost as if it were waiting for a chance to bite me. I wondered how much this little snake could help me boost my potential here. At the foot of Tingyun Mountain, I stood before a stone testing platform. I placed my hand on it and waited. 2 white lines of light flickered to life. Second grade, low-tier spirit root. Attribute, none. I pulled my hand back. It was a pathetic result. With a spirit root this low, most people would never even cross the threshold of the foundation establishment stage. They'd spend their whole lives stuck as nobodies. To make it worse, I had a none attribute, the absolute trash of the spirit root world. No destructive power like fire or lightning, no defensive weight like earth or water. I was just another face in the crowd, a mediocre talent among the thousands of dreamers gathered here. Your turn, I said, looking back at Chao Yi. She looked shocked. I shrugged my shoulders. What? Disappointed? No, she stammered. Just curious. She wasn't lying. She knew I was strong enough to crush geniuses like Yin Shu with a single slap. In her eyes, a man who could dominate like that didn't need a high-grade spirit root. She had seen me fight. She knew talent was just a number when it came to me. Chao Yi stepped forward. She waited for my white lines to fade before placing her hand on the stone. A gentle power flowed through her, circulating through her meridians before returning to the platform. For water blue ripples shimmered across the stone. 4th grade low-tier spirit root. Attribute, water. That got some attention. A few nearby cultivators shot her looks of envy and jealousy. A 4th grade root was 1 in 1,000. People like that usually didn't come here to scramble for crumbs with the commoners. It was like a high schooler showing up at an elementary school playground just to flex. Not bad, I said with a grin. With a 4th grade root, you're definitely going to surpass your father. I should hope so. Chao Yi smiled, looking relieved. He spent so many resources on me. If I don't surpass him, I'm just incompetent. So what's next? Do we climb? Of course, I replied. That's why we're here. Tingyan Mountain had 99,000 steps. From the bottom, the summit was lost in a sea of clouds, with eagles circling in the mist. It wasn't just a physical climb. Every 100 steps, a faint power would soothe your meridians. Every 1,000 steps, your bones and body would undergo a minor cleansing. Legend said that if you reached the very top, you'd be reborn as a peerless genius capable of suppressing an entire era. But in thousands of years, the highest anyone had ever reached was 94,000 steps. That person was Lee Sedeo, a descendant of a major power and my sworn enemy from a past life. She was the same annoying woman who once hid in a bamboo grove until I burned her house down and pelted her with ice blades. I didn't know if she could suppress an era, but she definitely had the talent. People like her were rare, though. Most climbers gathered within the first 30,000 steps. After that, the numbers dropped off a cliff. Sir, want to buy a climbing manual? A small boy in a Taoist robe ran up to me, clutching a bundle of scrolls. He handed me a piece of yellow paper with wet ink. With this, your climb will be twice as easy, he chirped. It shows you where to find supplies, where to meditate, and where to rest. Only one spirit stone. Great deal, right? I recognized him. He was the youngest disciple of the sect master, a brilliant talent who happened to be a natural rebel. He hated practicing. Instead, he'd steal paper from the sect, scribble nonsense on it, and come down here to scam poor travelers. I reached for my ring to pay, but Chow Yi beat me to it. She slapped 2 spirit stones into the boy's hand. I told you, I'm paying for everything on this trip, she said firmly. I sighed. Another rich woman throwing money around. As the boy skipped away to find his next victim, Chow Yi started comparing the 2 manuals she'd bought. Her smile quickly turned into a grimace. Wait, these are different, she muttered. The maps don't even match. I got scammed. I burst out laughing. She glared at me, teeth clenched. You knew, didn't you? Why didn't you stop me? I was going to buy one too, I said, starting up the stairs. Think of it as an entrance fee. 2 stones is a small price for the entertainment. I looked up at the long path ahead. If my memories served me right, this holy land wouldn't exist in 5 years. A beast tide from the Tsangxing Mountains would sweep through this region, burying a quarter of the kingdom in half a day. The sect master would lead every single disciple down the mountain to protect the civilians. The battle would only last 3 days, but not a single soul from Tingyan Mountain would ever return. In the future, this place would be a graveyard of spirit tablets and silent stone steps. That little scammer boy wouldn't be selling fake manuals anymore. He'd be the only one left, spent his days silently sweeping these stairs with a bamboo broom. By the time we hit 25,000 steps, I was still breathing easy. My second-grade route didn't seem to care. Chow Yi, however, was struggling. Her 4th-grade talent was being pushed to the limit. She was drenched in sweat, leaning against the stone railing, every step looking like a battle against gravity. Still holding up? I asked, handing her a fresh towel. I had bought a whole bundle of those towels before leaving home. Living through 9 lifetimes as an old soul had taught me one thing. There was no point in bitter, mindless cultivation if you couldn't enjoy the little things. My spatial ring was packed with gadgets designed purely to make life easier. I really can't do it, Chow Yi groaned. She slumped onto the stone steps, her hair a tangled mess. She buried her pale, exhausted face in the towel I gave her, her voice muffled and weak. I'm done for. I have a 4th-grade route, but my cultivation is just too low. I'm only at the late stage of body refining. The pressure is getting heavier with every step. I can't take it anymore. She looked up at me, defeated. You go on ahead. Don't wait for me. I'll just stay here and meditate for a while. Fair enough, I replied. I watched her settle into a cross-legged position on the steps before I turned and accelerated. The crushing gravity of the mountain meant nothing to me. I moved as if I were flying. 30,000 steps, 40,000, 50,000. By the time I hit the 60,000th step, the crowds had vanished. The air was thin and the platform was massive and empty, except for one man. He was a mountain of muscle, over 2 meters tall, with arms thicker than my thighs. With his wild, bushy beard, He looked like a cross between a mountain ogre and a professional wrestler. He studied me just as intensely as I studied him. Well now, he boomed. It's been a long time since I've seen such a brilliant young lad. He let out a hearty laugh. You look young, boy. Your cultivation shouldn't be higher than the 4th stage, yet you walked all the way up here. Your spirit root must be incredible. Has our human race produced another 9th-grade genius? Which ancient sect do you belong to? I stood there with my hands tucked into my sleeves, meeting his gaze. Behind those seemingly honest, cloudy eyes, I saw a sea of blood and mountains of corpses. This man was either a veteran of 1,000 battles or a cold-blooded butcher. Either way, he was someone who lived with his head on the line and held a total contempt for death. Shouldn't you introduce yourself before asking others? I asked calmly. The giant froze for a second, then burst into a roar of laughter. He cupped his fists toward me. I am Liu Kanglan, commander of the great desolate city in the demon abyss. Most men can't even look me in the eye, yet you not only stare back, you challenge me. I like your style, kid. If you ever need a place to sharpen your blade, come find me at the great desolate city. I'll take you to the front lines to slaughter some demons. The demon abyss. It was one of the 3 great forbidden zones, alongside the Tsangxing Mountains and the Ghost Abyss. The Tsangxing Mountains belonged to the demons, and though legends whispered of ancient demon emperors hiding in the core, no one had seen one in centuries. But the demon abyss was different. The demons, there weren't just a title. They were the most brutal, vicious creatures in the world. 700 years ago, the abyss was just a spirit stone mine. One day, the veins ran dry, black gas exploded from the depths, and monsters crawled out to destroy everything in sight. Humanity had to build a massive line of defense and sacrifice countless experts just to keep them contained. Knowing his identity, I finally pulled my hands from my sleeves and returned the salute. Black Iron City. Su what? The Su family of Black Iron. Liu Kanglan stiffened. His eyes widened. What is Su Chang'e to you? He's my grandfather. You know him? The way the giant looked at me changed instantly. It flickered like a traffic light, from admiration to fear, then to pity, and finally to a strange sense of realization. My brow twitched. Something was definitely not right here. What a pity, Liu Kanglan muttered. Suddenly, he reverted to his simple, boorish act and shut his mouth tight. He wasn't going to say another word. I stared at him. Was he really going to leave me hanging? Not a chance. I stepped forward quickly. Liu Kanglan saw me coming, but didn't seem worried. To him, I was just a talented kid. No matter how gifted, how could I beat a battle-hardened 6th-stage expert? Young people are so hot-headed, he chuckled. That's not good. As your senior, I'll give you a small lesson in respecting your elders. As I reached him, his spiritual energy surged. He lunged, reaching out to grab me in a professional wrestling hold. He expected an easy victory. Thud. A second later, the giant was pinned face-first against the stone floor. I had his massive arm twisted behind his back, locking his muscles so he couldn't exert any strength. Little guy, I whispered into his ear. You're just a 6th-stage Earth immortal. Did you really think you could take me? Who gave you the courage? Now, tell me, how do you know my grandfather? Ga? Let go, he grunted. Still not talking? Fine. Don't blame me if I start rubbing itching powder into your back. I'll make sure you're squirming for 3 days and nights. Liu Kanglan's eyes nearly popped out of his head. You're a devil. You're worse than the things in the abyss. I'm all muscle. I can't reach my own back. You'd really do that to a man. In the end, he cracked. A man has to know when to bow. If he were facing demons, he'd die before talking. He could endure any torture if it meant his name would be carved on the monument of loyalty. But being driven mad by itching powder because he tried to be mysterious in front of a junior? He'd be the laughingstock of the entire army for generations. I listened to his confession, but I wasn't satisfied. He didn't actually know much. All he knew was that Su Chang'e used to be the commander of the Ghost Abyss defense. My grandfather had spent years fighting ghosts in hand-to-hand combat, until he was ambushed a few years ago. He had barely survived, retired, and returned home to recover. Every year, he needed treatment to suppress the ghost marks left in his body. I immediately thought of that alchemist I saw back at the estate. He must have been there to treat the old man. But honestly, that guy's skills were trash compared to the wealthy lady I knew. I had watched him work. He was all flash and no substance, turning pills into black charcoal. He was probably just trying to save face in front of a junior like me. If my grandfather was relying on a hack like that, his cultivation couldn't be that high anymore. Based on the giant's tone, the old man was definitely above the 6th stage. Maybe 7th or 8th. Probably an 8th-stage peak at most. After all, his name wasn't on the immortal rankings. He couldn't be some hidden immortal emperor, right? I laughed at the thought. No way. That was impossible. I decided not to stress over it. If I wanted to know about the old man's past, I'd just ask him when I got back to Black Iron City. I was his favorite grandson. He wouldn't keep secrets from me. Feeling bored with the conversation, I let go of Liu Kanglin. The giant scrambled to his feet, rubbing his shoulder and looking at me like I was a monster. Liu Kanglin wiped the sand and dust from his face. He reached up to pop his jaw back into place after it had been knocked crooked by the ground. He stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. "So why?" he muttered. I narrowed my eyes at him. He quickly waved his hands and gave me a sheepish smile. "What kind of strength is this? Damn it. I couldn't even put up a fight. You have to be at least at the 7th stage heaven immortal realm, right? I have no idea what they fed you growing up." I didn't bother answering. I just turned away and pressed my palm against the smooth stone surface of the cliff. We were at the 60,000th step. One more step upward, and the pressure would increase tenfold. Even though I had 9th-stage cultivation from my past lives, my current spiritual root was too low-level and fragile. If I pushed further, it would be like a dying old man suddenly eating 1,000-year-old ginseng. The surge of power wouldn't heal me. It would blow me apart. Luckily, I didn't need to reach the very top. I was close enough to touch the base of the enlightenment steel. That was all I needed for my plan. "Little snake," I whispered, tapping the ring on my finger. "Little snakey wakey. Time to wake up." The ring twitched. "Don't use those cutesy words. It's disgusting." The silver snake materialized, coiling around my fingertip. It flicked its tiny pink tongue, looking up at me. "Get closer," I commanded. "Let me touch the steel." "I'm pressing against it now," the snake replied. "I'm really doing it." "You're so annoying," the snake hissed. "Just do it already." I let out a small smirk and pressed my right hand firmly against the dark brown stone. A biting chill surged through my palm. The snake's eyes flashed with a deep red light. It opened its mouth and sank its fangs into the stone as if it were soft tofu, leaving 2 tiny punctures. Suddenly, a massive torrent of power found an outlet. It roared from the deepest core of the steel, rushing through those tiny holes toward my hand. "Crap. Be rational." I felt the surge and turned pale. My hand shook, and I almost bolted. "I told you I can't handle too much." "Look at you, acting like a coward," the snake snapped. "Don't move." The energy didn't make me explode. The silver snake blocked the holes with its mouth, swallowing at least 99% of the flood. The tiny fraction that remained was exactly what my fragile new spiritual root could handle. As the energy entered my body, I shuddered. My soul felt light, as if I were being lifted into the clouds. Along with the power, fragmented images began to pour into my mind. I saw a lonely island and a small pavilion. For teenagers, 3 boys and 1 girl, sat together, drinking and laughing. They were drunk on wine and sincerity. They made a pact. Every 5 years, they would meet here to celebrate their journey to the peak of the immortal path. The first 5 years passed. All 4 came. A man and a woman among them had fallen in love and married. The others teased them, but offered their blessings. The second 5 years came, but only 3 returned. The path of cultivation is a war against the heavens, against demons, and against all living things. Falling along the way was a tragedy, but it was the reality they lived. After the third 5 years, the city where the married couple lived was attacked by a terrifying demon. Black flames swallowed everything. People died like ants. A massive creature with giant ram horns reached toward the sky. As the strongest cultivators in the city, the couple stood their ground to cover the retreat of the citizens. They faced the godlike monster and never came back. The fourth 5 years arrived. Snow fell heavily. For wine cups sat on the table in the lake pavilion, but only one man sat there drinking alone. The boyishness was gone from his face, replaced by a thick beard and a body covered in scars. He laughed at the calm lake, talking to the empty seats about his adventures and the secret realms he had explored. He spoke of a girl he liked, a mortal girl with a warm, simple family and a carefree smile. He didn't want to ruin her peace. Cultivators in his world were respected, but they carried the burden of protection. He knew he could die any day, maybe in 5 years, maybe tomorrow. The next morning, the pavilion was empty. The laughter of the night before was just a dream. But on the table where they had once made their grand promises, a line of small characters was carved. You are buried deep in the springs, your bones turning to dust. I am left in the world of men, my hair white as snow. The last man didn't make it to the next 5 years. I saw a magnificent, terrible war. The man stood shirtless in the sky, holding a massive black stone steel. Lightning and fire danced around him. Opposite him stood the ram-horned demon, now 1,000 meters tall, a true god of destruction. The city behind him held millions of people. They were trapped. There was nowhere left to run. Cultivators rose into the air one by one. They knew they couldn't win, but in that world, a cultivator dying behind a mortal was a disgrace. Dying to protect them was the ultimate glory. The man roared, hurling lightning that scarred the demon's hide, but his mountain-shattering attacks barely slowed the beast down. One by one, the other cultivators ran out of energy and turned themselves into living bombs, exploding against the demon tide. Inside the city, the people grabbed saws and rusted blades, ready to take one monster down with them. The cowards took poison or hid in cellars, praying for a miracle. Finally, the man's strength hit its limit. He gasped for air, looking back at a flower shop in the city. He didn't see the girl he loved, but it didn't matter anymore. He gathered his final shred of power into a blade of light. He didn't aim it at the demon. He drove it into his own forehead, right into a glowing purple thunder crystal. He charged into the demon's embrace. A crimson explosion lit up the sky. His life vanished. The black steel he carried shattered into pieces, falling into the deep sea and the vast sky. I opened my eyes, still standing by the cliff wall. The vision of blood and fire faded, but the weight of it remained. This enlightenment steel, on Mount Tingyun, wasn't some mystical gift from the heavens. It was just a broken shard of the weapon that man had carried into his final battle. That broken stone shard contained a trace of the man's power. It had been nourishing the meridians and blood of everyone who came here for centuries. But I couldn't stop wondering. Was that world from my vision an ancient version of this land, or was it another realm entirely? If it was the ancient past, why were there no records of those demons? In that vision, humanity was weak, huddled behind stone walls, barely surviving against a tide of monsters. But in this world, humans ruled almost everywhere. The demons were locked away in the demon abyss, and the ghosts were suppressed in the abandoned pit. Even the powerful beast tribes were forced into the deep mountains, hunted by us for cultivation materials. Something didn't add up. It wasn't here, was it? I whispered. I shifted my body to block Liu Kanglin's view and spoke mentally to the tiny silver snake wrapped around my finger. You're right, the snake replied. It wasn't. I sighed. I figured as much. That other world looked like a nightmare for humans, but their cultivators were terrifying. The man carrying the stone slab felt stronger than anyone I'd ever met. He felt like he belonged at the very peak of the immortal realms, way beyond someone like Lisadeo. Was he at the peak of the immortal stage? I asked. If that makes you feel better, sure, the snake said dismissively. What do you mean by that? Speak clearly. People who talk in riddles deserve to have their mouths sewn shut. Knowing too much is bad for you, the snake hissed. Just remember this. The owner of that steel wasn't actually that strong. If you focus on your training and push your potential, you'll surpass him soon enough. Fine. Give me a benchmark then. What counts as qualified in your eyes? Reach a score of 10 in at least 2 categories, the snake said. Become a true all-rounder. Get the key. Everything you want to know is waiting for you on the ship. I clicked my tongue. I really wanted to pin this snake to the ground and squeeze the truth out of it, just like I did to that brute earlier. But I couldn't. I wasn't strong enough. I remembered the feeling in the cave, how it drained my strength in an instant. This tiny snake was likely on the same level as that horned demon god from the vision. I wondered if the snake was male or female. If it was a male, I'd eventually catch it and soak it in a jar of medicinal wine. If it was a female, well, are you thinking about something disrespectful again? The snake hissed. Not me. No way. Don't talk nonsense. I lied. The snake's crimson eyes glared at me. Suddenly, it lunged. Its fangs sank deep into my middle finger. I hissed in pain, my face contorting, but I didn't pull away. I knew what it was doing. A stream of pure, refined energy flowed from its fangs into my limbs. Unlike the violent, crashing tide of energy from the Enlightenment steel, this was a gentle stream. It was the softest way to nourish a spiritual root, raising its grade without any risk of damage. I felt like a jerk. This snake was treating me so well, and I wanted to turn it into booze. Why? You're an animal, I told myself. No dinner for you for a month. Last time, I used the essence of a medicinal human to forge a grade 2 colorless spiritual root. But now, under the snake's nourishment, my root began to climb. It skipped grade 3 entirely and surged all the way to high-tier grade 4. Building a foundation is easy, but improving it is the real challenge. Anyone can slap together a crappy spiritual root with enough energy, but refining it into something superior takes a miracle. I stood there by the cliff, eyes closed. The mountain had a protective array that prevented cultivators from attacking each other, so I wasn't worried about Liu Kanglan. Eventually, my spiritual root hit its saturation point. The snake stopped the flow and sucked the remaining energy back into itself. I opened my eyes, a satisfied grin spreading across my face. Even without counting my actual cultivation level, I could finally call myself a genius. My father, Su Jingheng, the man who looked down on me and called me a waste, only had a mid-tier grade 4 root. I imagined going home and showing off. I'd release my aura, reveal my superior root, and watch his face turn pale. The elders would all gasp in shock, shouting about how terrifying my talent was. Then I'd tell them the Su family was too small for my ambitions and walk away. I shook my head, clearing the fantasy. I wasn't some son-in-law protagonist from a cheap novel. Besides, if I tried that distorted smirk, look, my grandfather would probably slap the teeth right out of my mouth. I stretched, my bones popping like firecrackers. I'd been standing there for a long time. Liu Kanglan, the muscular brute, was already gone. He'd left a piece of paper weighted down by a stone. It had an address on it, an invitation to visit him in Great Desolate City. I folded it up, tucked it into my spatial ring, and started my trek down the mountain. It had been 19 days since we arrived. In that time, Chowie had worked hard. She had climbed from the 25,000th step to the 28,000th. Her talent hadn't changed much, but her meridians were wider and tougher. She had even broken through to the second stage foundation establishment. She was happy with her progress and was only staying on the stairs to wait for me. Going down was much easier than going up. I flew down the path, moving so fast I was practically a blur. I took the corners like a professional racer, my feet skidding across the stone. I stopped just before I reached Chowie. I shook the racing thoughts out of my head. I didn't need a fast car. I had my own 2 legs. Why? Over here. Chowie waved, jogging toward me. You're finally down. Any later, and we would have missed the Imperial Capital Festival. She looked at me, her eyes lingering. She hadn't seen me in over 2 weeks, and she clearly noticed a difference. My aura was steadier, more restrained, and, if I do say so myself, a bit more charming. My cultivation felt like a deep, bottomless well to her. The festival in the imperial capital of the Great Yin country was calling. They called it a grand festival, but it was really just the preliminary selection for the major sects to find new disciples. The requirements were usually pretty loose, but it was the start of everything. To make the cut for a major sect, you needed at least a grade 3 spiritual root and a solid character. Of course, it also helped if you could butter up the examiners. Once you passed the preliminaries, you were allowed to follow an elder back to their sect for the real test. If you passed that, you were in. If not, you were sent home. This grand event in the imperial capital was organized by the Great Yin royal family. It was basically a massive networking event for the country's top geniuses. The goal was simple: build some national pride. The royals figured if one of these kids eventually hit the big time, they'd remember their roots and help the Great Yin country out of a jam later on. Chow E and I arrived late. We rolled into the capital just the night before the sect elders were due to descend. We were covered in dust and exhausted from the road. I didn't have the energy to mingle with the so-called geniuses of Great Yin. I went straight to the room Chow Yi arranged for me and crashed. The Chow family merchant guild was a big deal. They had branches in every city, which meant they had a massive web of connections. As soon as we arrived, Chow Yi's father, Chow Yang, was dragged off to drink with city lords and officials. Chow Yi didn't have it any easier. As the future heir, she had to memorize the politics of every city and make sure the big shots knew her face. It was her backup plan. If the path of cultivation failed, she'd have to settle for inheriting a multi-billion-dollar business. Life is tough, right? I woke up in the evening feeling completely refreshed. Since I couldn't sleep, I hopped out of my window and climbed onto the roof. I didn't care about the dust on the tiles. I just lay back with my hands behind my head and stared at the stars. Looking at the sky was my favorite thing to do in my past life. Back then, my talent was trash and my cultivation was low. I had failed the sect entrance exams and ended up building a small 2-story shack at the foot of the moon-scented Immortal Mountain. I turned my roof into a huge terrace filled with alchemy equipment. I remembered a small lounge chair in the corner. Sometimes, a rich lady friend of mine would get tired or fail a batch of pills, and she'd run into my arms for comfort. We'd lie on that chair together, arguing about what the constellations meant. I didn't know the first thing about astrology, so I'd just make stuff up. I'd tell her the fire star was extra bright tonight. When she asked what a fire star was, I'd just say, "It's a star that breathes fire." She was way smarter than me, but I always won our arguments. Whenever I ran out of logic, I'd just tickle her waist or whisper in her ear. If that didn't work, I'd just kiss her until she went quiet. It was shameless, but it worked every time. She'd end up nesting in my chest, agreeing with whatever nonsense I said, like the world being flat or the immortal realm being run by lizard people. Back then, life was quiet. The alchemy furnace, the chair, the stars. Everything on that roof belonged to her, but she belonged to me. The sound of creaking would snap me back to the present. Some doors are just built-in security systems. They scream the moment you touch them. A slender figure in a stunning purple dress leaped onto the roof and sat down beside me. "How do you know I was up here?" I asked. Chow Yi's face was flushed from the alcohol. She rolled her eyes at me. "My room is right below yours. You walked past my balcony on your way up. You left very obvious footprints." "Seriously?" I grumbled. "My shoes are clean. Is your maid so hard-working she polishes the balcony every hour?" Chow Yi didn't answer. It was late autumn, and the night breeze was biting. She shivered in her thin silk dress and glanced at my thick black robe. I noticed her looking. "Are you cold?" I asked, blinking innocently. "Yes," she whispered. "This dress is for looks, not for warmth." "Yeah, me too. It's freezing out here." She sighed. "As a gentleman, this is the part where you're supposed to take off your coat and give it to me." "Oh, well, I'm not a gentleman." Chow Yi groaned. "Su Huai, you're going to be single forever. You'll never find a girlfriend." "Impossible," I said, raising my voice. "No way." "Why are you so sure?" "Because there's someone waiting for me at the moon-scented sect." "Liars," she scoffed. "No girl would like a guy who's too stingy to share a coat." "I told you I'm cold too." I snapped, pulling my robe open. "Fine. If you're so brave, come in here and share it." "Fine. I will." "Go ahead then. I'm coming in." Chow Yi bit her lip and actually lunged toward my chest. But instead of a warm embrace, she got a face full of fabric. I had already stood up and whipped the robe off, tossing it onto her head. "I can't believe you actually tried to get in," I muttered. "Don't you know about personal space?" She peeked out from under the robe. "I knew you'd chicken out." "Chicken out? Me? I'm the bravest guy you'll ever meet." "Then why did you jump away?" "I was afraid I'd lose control," I teased. "I didn't want to make you scream." "Why would I scream?" "You're too young for that conversation," I said. "I'm literally a few months older than you." She realized what I meant, and her face turned even redder than the wine had made it. "Ugh, you're all talk. You're probably just weak. You can't actually do anything, can you?" I gritted my teeth. "Are you challenging me, Chow Yi? I could make your father a grandfather 9 months from today." "All talk, no action," she challenged, standing up. "My room is right downstairs. Do you dare to go? Come on, let's see you make some magic happen." I didn't say a word. I turned and bolted back to my room. Okay, I'll admit it. I'm a king of trash talk, but a total coward in reality. Behind my handsome face was the heart of a shy guy. Back in the Sioux estate, I used to flirt with the maids all the time, which is why everyone thought I was a playboy. But in this life, I was still a total rookie. The only girls I've even touched were my servant Chung Xiaohe and her bratty kid, and that was just to pinch their cheeks. I had the heart of a rebel, but none of the guts. If I had even half the skill of a real player, I would have made my move long ago. But here I was, getting out-flirted by a girl on a rooftop. Pathetic. Damn it. How was I supposed to become a legendary playboy if I couldn't even handle a little flirting? If I wanted to stand at the top of the world, I needed to learn from those cold-hearted capitalists and toughen up. After I bolted, the rooftop became quiet again. Chowie sat there alone, clutching my black robe and swaying her head slightly. She had been so bold tonight because she'd spent way too long being the perfect girl back in Luoqing. As the eldest daughter of the Chow family, every word and action of hers had to be measured and graceful. She'd spent her life studying how to make everyone like her. It was exhausting. Meeting me, a guy who was powerful, mysterious, but acted like a common street thug, finally gave her a chance to drop the act. Plus, she'd had a lot to drink. I could definitely smell the alcohol on her. She knew that no matter what she said or did tonight, she could just blame the wine tomorrow and pretend it never happened. She buried her face in my robe and sighed. She'd always thought her beauty would be her greatest bargaining chip in life. She never expected to throw herself at someone and get rejected. It was a total blow to her confidence. The next morning, the focus shifted to the immortal sects. In the immortal realm, powers are divided into 4 tiers. At the very top are the transcendent powers. These are places guarded by an immortal emperor or at least 2 immortal venerables. There are only 4 of them in the entire realm: the Yanhua Immortal Sect, the Tianyu Immortal Sect, the Immortal Cold Palace, and the Sword Tomb. Oh, and the strongest of them all, the Xuantian Divine Empire. Below them are the first-class powers, which have an immortal venerable or 3 immortal kings. Then come the standard immortal sects, like Tingyun Mountain, which just need 1 immortal king to qualify. Everything else is considered unranked. These smaller sects are fragile. A single beast tide could wipe them out. In this dangerous world, they disappear as fast as they appear. You might ask about the Dayan Empire, where the strongest fighter is only a rank 5. Well, the Dayan Empire is just a secular kingdom. It doesn't even count as an immortal power. It only survives because all secular kingdoms are essentially tools of the Xuantian Divine Empire used to maintain order among commoners. Unless you're another transcendent power, nobody dares to mess with the Divine Empire's territory. In my past life, even though I was an invincible immortal venerable, I wouldn't have dared to provoke a true immortal emperor. If I did, the consequences would be, well, actually, I already know the consequences. I've experienced them firsthand. Let's just say it didn't end well. Today was the big day at the Huangdu Square, the largest martial arts arena in the empire. Usually, it was for military drills or bloody duels, but today it was filled with thousands of young geniuses dreaming of the immortal path. For most kids in the Dayan Empire, the Huangdu Grand Assembly was their only chance to see a top-tier sect up close. These sects usually hide in deep mountains or dangerous forbidden zones. Take the Immortal Cold Palace. It's perched on a frozen mountain surrounded by monsters they purposefully let breed to test their disciples. If a low-level cultivator tried to walk there, they'd be eaten by snow demons before they even reached the base. Or the Yanhua Immortal Sect. They're built on an island in the middle of a massive lake called Chinhua Valley. The lake is so big you can't see the shore, and it's filled with vicious water demons. Without an expert to guide you, getting there is suicide. The sect leaders aren't stupid, though. They know people can't reach them, so they send elders out to recruit. To keep things fair and avoid fighting over the best talents, the process is public. The elders sit in a row, and the young geniuses pick which line to stand in. If the elder likes you, you get a chance to go to the sect for the final trial. Hey, Su Huai, Chowie whispered as we stood in line. Are you nervous? Nervous about what? I asked. Right, you're strong and your talent is, wait. Her voice dropped even lower. Su Huai, your talent doesn't actually meet the Yanhua Immortal Sect standards. They require at least a grade 3 high-level spiritual root. Yours is only grade 2. What's there to be afraid of? I shrugged. She swallowed hard. You aren't actually planning to drag the elder into a dark alley and beat him up, are you? I stared at her, offended. How can you be so crude? I'm a bright, cheerful, upstanding young man. You make me sound like a thug who bullies old people. She rolled her eyes. Bright and cheerful? You literally buried a 70-year-old man outside Luocheng 2 weeks ago. I sneered. Hey, you dug the hole. You threw the dirt. How is that my fault? Chowie froze. She thought back to that night and realized I was right. I had just stood there with my hands in my pockets while she did all the heavy lifting. I really was a piece of work. Fine, I buried him, she hissed. But you killed him. You can't deny that. Nonsense, I said. The old guy had mushrooms growing on his face. He clearly died from staying up too late. What does that have to do with me? Are you his relative? Are you trying to frame me for money? Su Huai, you are truly shameless. Thank you for the compliment. As we were bickering at the back of the line, someone tapped my shoulder. Instinct took over. I grabbed the arm, pivoted, and slammed the person into the ground with a shoulder throw. I looked down. It was Luo Yuanhe. He was lying there with a vacant stare, his right arm completely dislocated. He looked like he was contemplating the mysteries of the universe, but he was actually just hovering between life and death. I'm pretty sure he saw his late grandfather waving at him from the clouds. Oh, Luo Yuanhe, what are you doing here? Chowie asked. She poked his frozen face with a stick she found. Luo Yuanhe's lip twitched. Light returned to his eyes as the pain finally hit his brain. He clutched his arm, finally understanding how Yin Sikhin felt when I slapped him. The pain was exquisite. He looked up at me with pure resentment in his eyes. I was just trying to say hello. I reacted with a backhand shoulder throw. Was it appropriate? Probably not. But after 9 lives of fighting for survival, my reflexes were tuned to a hair trigger. I didn't have a blade in my hand, which was the only reason he was still breathing. I realized my mistake immediately and flashed a sheepish smile. I reached down and pulled him up. Sorry, Brother Luo. I didn't realize it was you. By the time Luo Yuanhe found his feet, Chowie had already reverted to her dignified, gentle lady persona. You'd never guess she was the same girl who had been poking a semi-conscious man in the face with a dirty stick seconds ago. Brother Luo, she said sweetly, shouldn't you be with the third prince and his group? Where are they? Luo Yuanhe gripped his dislocated arm. With a sickening crack, he twisted it back into place himself. He winced, flexed his shoulder twice, and sighed. They've already gone back to the heavenly cold palace. Yin Sikhin is a core disciple there, and since Miss Situ was pre-selected, they didn't need to deal with these tedious evaluations. They left half a month ago. Then why are you here in the line for the Misty Moon sect? She asked. Luo Yuanhe looked at the ground. To be honest, there's a gap between Yin Sikhin and me. He's a prince. I'm a subject. If I followed him to the heavenly cold palace, he'd be an elite disciple, while I'd just be outer sect fodder. We could never be true friends like that. I'd rather choose a different path and work for my own future than live in his shadow as a sidekick. I looked at him with a new sense of respect. Of course, there was a high chance he was just making that up. He probably heard me talking earlier about how the Misty Moon sect had more beautiful women and decided to jump ship for the view. Either way, I liked his style. I don't care who you were before, I said, clapping him on the back. From now on, we're brothers. If there's a blessing, I'll take it. If there's trouble, you'll handle it. We stood in line for another half hour. By the time I had almost convinced Luo Yuanhe that I was a super scion from the planet Cybertron, it was finally our turn to face the elders. We were standing in the royal plaza of the Great Yin Kingdom. 22 elders from 22 different sects sat in a long row. Some sects, like the Zuntian dynasty, only took family members. Others, like the Sword Tomb, sent scouts to find prodigies and ignored everyone else. The remaining seats belonged to first-rate sects near the Great Yin or smaller Taoist schools. The power dynamic was obvious. The big sects took the best talent, making them stronger, while the small sects struggled with the leftovers. It was a cycle that never ended. 4th grade upper tier spiritual root. No attribute. The Misty Moon elder muttered, looking up at me. He hesitated for a second before stamping my paperwork with a red, qualified mark. No attribute roots rarely produced powerful masters, but I looked confident enough, and it was just a qualifying spot. Candidate Su Huai, he said. Congratulations on passing the preliminary round. You are eligible for the Misty Moon Sect trials. Wait to the side. Thank you, Elder, I said, tucking my hands into my sleeves and stepping away. Chow Yi had already passed with her 4th grade water attribute root. Finally, Luo Yuanha stepped up. Luo Yuanha. 4th grade upper tier. Wind attribute. Good. You pass. The Elder, a man in his 60s named Elder Xing, took a sip of water and looked at the 11 of us who had made the cut. Listen up, he said, his voice booming across the plaza. I am an outer sect elder of the Misty Moon Sect. Over 5,000 people in the Great Yin Kingdom applied for this. Only you 11 remain. I know you think you're geniuses in your hometowns, and you aren't mediocre, or you wouldn't be here. But the immortal realm is vast. The Great Yin is just a tiny speck on the map. He leaned forward, his expression grim. In the final trials, you will be competing against over 100,000 geniuses from across the realms. Out of those 100,000, fewer than 500 will actually be accepted into the sect. The silence was heavy. Even Chow Yi looked worried. A 3rd grade route was the bare minimum to apply, and a 4th grade was just the average. Her chances were slim, and she knew it. Opportunity comes with risk, Elder Xing continued. Our sect has a rule. If you fail the final trial, you are not allowed to return home for 3 years. You must stay in the Chunhua Valley to work. If you want to back out and join a smaller, easier sect, do it now. Once we hit the road, there is no turning back. Nobody moved. We all knew the rules. Life is short. Why not take the gamble? Elder Xing smiled. Good. Go say your goodbyes to your families. We depart tomorrow at dawn. Don't be late. The group scattered. For many, this was the last time they'd see their parents for years. Chow Yi's father, Chow Yang, was beaming with pride but couldn't hide the sadness in his eyes. His little girl was leaving home for the first time. Since I had no family to say goodbye to, I ended up wandering the capital with Luo Yuanha. Let's go to a brothel, Luo Yuanha suggested, looking desperate. Once we enter the sect, there won't be any entertainment like that. It's a life of celibacy from here on out. I shot that idea down immediately. For him, the sect might be a prison of discipline. For me, the Misty Moon Sect was a paradise of beautiful sisters. It was where I planned to truly enjoy my new life. But I wasn't a tyrant. I'll tell you what, I said. We'll settle this with rock, paper, scissors. Whoever wins gets to decide, I said, looking Luo Yuanha straight in the eye. Brother Luo, what are you going to play? He widened his eyes, looking trapped. Do I have to tell you? You don't have to, I replied with a grin. But I'm going to play scissors. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Rock, paper, scissors. I'm a man of my word. I played scissors just like I said I would. But as I looked down at Luo Yuanha's hand, I kept my gaze fixed on his eyes. He shivered under my stare. His tightly clenched fist slowly relaxed, finger by finger, turning from a rock into paper. Good brother, I patted his shoulder. I win. Now follow me. Luo Yuanha looked up at the sky and let out a long, dramatic sigh. Su Huai, you're so kind I could cry. You could have just forced me, but you insisted on this democratic game instead. You're way too gentle. We spent the entire day diving into the Imperial City's merchant guilds. Under my guidance, we bought enough seasonings to last years. My spatial ring was soon packed with every kind of daily necessity imaginable. Return valid JSON only. Luo Yuanha started to doubt I was going to a sect to cultivate. He was convinced I was heading to the Misty Moon Sect to open a restaurant. The strangest part for him was when I dragged him across half the capital just to buy several bags of candlelight flower seeds. They weren't spiritual herbs, just common ornamental flowers. In fact, they were considered low class because they were too hardy. They grew anywhere there was sunlight, lacking the delicate beauty of expensive flora. Nobles saw them as little more than persistent weeds. Luo Yuanha was dying to know why I wanted a pile of weed seeds, but he didn't dare ask. By the time we finished, I felt fine, but he was clutching his lower back in pain. When we got back, Chow Yi looked at him in total shock. He was so exhausted he couldn't even eat the lavish farewell dinner her father, Chow Yang, had prepared. He just crawled into his room and passed out. The next morning, at 5:45 a.m., the sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon. The roosters were full of energy, screaming at the sun, while those of us forced by life to wake up early felt like death. Nobody was late for a journey this important. Elder Xing counted heads and led us to a small flying vessel about 10 meters long. It didn't have a hull like a ship. It looked more like a plane with massive wings, clearly inspired by the anatomy of birds. It even had an external engine. A powerful fifth-rank flying dragon was harnessed to the front, snorting and huffing. Luo Yuanhe, having recovered from his mysterious back pain, leaned against the deck railing and marveled at the beast. A great sect is truly something else. A fifth-rank expert would be a king in the Great Yin Kingdom, but here, they're just used to pull a carriage. Chao Yi stopped waving goodbye to her father and rolled her eyes at him. If His Majesty heard that, he'd be so happy he'd challenge your father to a duel on the spot. Hey, I didn't say anything. Luo Yuanhe squeaked. Elder Xing gave the command. The dragon roared, its wings beating the air and kicking up a storm of dust. The harness snapped tight, and the vessel slowly rose into the sky. Below us, the buildings shrank until the entire magnificent capital and the beautiful landscape were spread out like a map. Chao Yi's expression turned somber. Unlike boys, who act like wild horses the moment they leave home, girls tend to feel the weight of leaving family more deeply. Luo Yuanhe opened his mouth to comfort her, but didn't know what to say. He nudged me, but I just let out a quiet, teasing snort. I pulled some soft tissues out of my spatial ring and slapped them onto Chao Yi's head. If you want to cry, just do it. Cry loud. She turned and glared at me, her teeth practically grinding. I'm just a little sentimental. Who told you I was crying? I blinked and pointed a finger directly at Luo Yuanhe. He looked like he wanted to jump overboard. After a while, another young man on the ship invited us into the cabin for a drink. Most of the candidates and Elder Xing were already inside. The air was thick with the aroma of fine wines and local delicacies from all over the kingdom. These kids had come prepared. I've always been thick-skinned, so I blended in immediately, acting like I'd known these strangers for years. Chao Yi, being socially graceful, pulled out some specialties from Luo City to share. Only Luo Yuanhe stood by the door, trembling with silent rage. Thanks to me, his spatial ring contained nothing but family cultivation manuals, seasonings, and toilet paper. He couldn't exactly offer the elder a bottle of soy sauce. He was genuinely worried that if he tried, the elder would toss him off the ship before we even left the kingdom. Elder Xing was a 6th-rank expert, a true Earth immortal. His status in the Misty Moon sect was middle of the road, and he was quite easygoing. Now, slightly tipsy from the students' constant pouring, he started sharing details about the entrance trials. The Misty Moon sect is one of the 4 supreme powers in the immortal realm. Their trial was straightforward. First, you pass the heart-questioning gate to ensure you aren't a total villain. Then, everyone is thrown into a secret realm to hunt demons and monsters for points. When time is up, the top 500 scorers are admitted. He spoke in fragments, sounding like a drunkard's rambling, but I knew better. His old eyes were sharp with wisdom. He was giving us this information on purpose. In the sect, elders competed just as much as disciples. If more of the kids he scouted passed the trial, it would look good on his record. Elder Xing, a boy across from me, asked, raising his glass. What level of cultivation is considered successful? Successful. The elder chuckled, shaking his head. The path of cultivation is long, littered with the bones of those who achieved nothing. You don't just cultivate the body, you cultivate the heart. The Misty Moon Emperor once set a rule. Once a disciple's cultivation matches the grade of their spiritual root, they are allowed to leave the valley. But that doesn't mean they are successful. He took a sip of wine. Those who leave and cause chaos are stripped of their rank and hunted down. Those who leave to protect the weak and slay demons, even if they are only 3rd or 4th rank, the sect considers them successful. But those who leave just to hide in a city and do nothing, even if they become kings or sovereigns, in the emperor's eyes, they are just ordinary disciples who achieved nothing. The cabin went silent as the others processed this. I sat by the window, staring out at the soft white clouds. I didn't have a single negative thought about this Misty Moon Emperor. In fact, I felt a deep sense of respect, not for his words, but for his actions. Near the Qinghua Valley lies the Ghost Abyss, the top of the 3 great forbidden zones. It has leaked the aura of ghost emperors more than once. Yet, it isn't nearly as famous as the other forbidden zones. Why? Because not a single member of the ghost race has ever managed to break through the Misty Moon sect's front line. The Misty Moon Emperor was the only Emperor-level powerhouse I actually knew in my past life. Back when I was still a mere immortal king, I had personally hunted down more than a few ghost kings who had escaped his front lines. Of course, the Emperor killed ghosts for the sake of the world. I killed them to trade their remains for resources to get stronger. I couldn't quite grasp his selflessness, but I respected a man who stood that tall. Our flying boat glided smoothly through the air. On board, the teenagers quickly became friends. In our downtime, we did what kids do. We talked big and bragged. I joined in too. One day, the group started debating whether someone with a max-level spiritual root could actually break through to become a 9th-rank Immortal Venerable. I just let out a silly laugh and shouted at them. You laymen, why stop at Immortal Venerable? The peak you dream of is just my starting line. I, Su Huai, have the destiny of a great emperor. The group erupted into laughter. Someone pointed at me and jeered. There goes Su Huai again, bragging. What's next? Are you going to tell us a rich female 9th-rank alchemist is going to sponsor your path to the top? I widened my eyes in mock outrage. How can you stain a man's innocence like that? Cultivation is about companionship. Can you really call a Dao companion's support sponsorship? I started rambling then, throwing out nonsense phrases about 30 years east, 30 years west, and slaying demons until our hair turns white. The air on the boat was filled with joy. They laughed at my bragging, and I laughed because, in this life, I finally had the power to repay the rich woman from my past life for everything she had given me. Days passed in that easy rhythm. We flew over countless valleys and straits until we reached a lake as vast as an ocean. We had arrived at Misty Moon Valley. It was a literal paradise. The water reflected the sky, clouds drifted low over the waves, and white herons slept peacefully on the banks. The island in the center of the lake was massive, easily the size of a major city. A 1,000-foot stone mountain towered in the middle, covered in palaces and pavilions. At its base sat a bustling town. The town was packed with people. Most were geniuses from small kingdoms who had failed the entrance exams in previous years. If you failed, you had to stay in the valley for 3 years. Some people grew attached and never left. Others, like me in my past life, were charming enough to hook up with a female disciple of the sect and settle down right there. You can rest in town for a few days, Elder Howe said, standing at the front of the boat. He looked up at the sect buildings and then down at the cultivators struggling to make a living below, letting out a soft sigh. The candidates from other regions haven't arrived yet. The trial won't start for another 4 or 5 days. You're free to do as you wish. When it begins, I'll notify you through your identity plates. Yes, Elder, we shouted in unison. The boat docked at the harbor. After handing us each a 2-inch jade plate with a serial number on the back, Elder Howe headed back to the sect to report. The 11 of us stood together, wishing each other luck and promising to meet again before splitting off into smaller groups. Naturally, I stayed with Chao Yi and Luo Yuanhe. Over the centuries, the town had developed a massive economy built on the backs of failed geniuses. There were restaurants, shops, and endless inns for new arrivals. It felt like a capital city, which made sense given that over 100,000 candidates showed up for every trial. Night began to fall after we picked our inn. I grabbed dinner with the guys, but as soon as we finished, I slipped away alone. I wandered down the long main street until I reached a quiet corner of the market. I climbed onto the roof of a shop that sat directly across from a smaller, weathered inn. I sat there, frozen, staring at a specific window. A candle flickered inside, casting a small, delicate silhouette against the paper window pane. Even across 2 lifetimes, even if it was just a shadow, I recognized her instantly. She was the one who had never left my side, the woman I had spent centuries with and longed for every day since I woke up in this life. Inside that room at the Tingyuan Inn, Chu Siyu sat huddled on a hard wooden bed, her knees pulled to her chest. She kept her head down, ignoring the loud, rhythmic pounding on her door. Siyu, open the door, okay? A man's voice pleaded from the hallway. Listen to your uncle. Come meet the first prince. I'm doing this for your own good. He's handsome, wealthy, and his talent is top tier. He's the eldest son. If you please him, you could become a princess of the great Huang dynasty. Silence. No answer, no movement. The man outside finally lost his patience, his voice turning sharp and nasty. Chu Siyu, don't be ungrateful. Your parents left you to us, and I've raised you for 10 years. 10 years. Don't think that just because you can refine some basic first-grade pills you're suddenly a big shot. You think joining the Misty Moon sect will get you away from us. No way. Open this door right now, or when I get in there. When you get in there, what are you going to do? The man jumped, his threat cut short. He spun around to find a stranger standing right next to him. I stood there in my black robes, a gentle smile on my face. But my eyes were different. They were cold, deadly cold. The man shivered. A primal fear took root in his chest. Why? Why are you pounding on people's doors? I asked, tucking my hands into my sleeves, my smile never wavering. The man stuttered, wanting to tell me to mind my own business, but the words died in his throat. The girl inside is my niece, he managed to say. She's being stubborn, throwing a tantrum. Is that so? Really? I'm not lying. Her name is Chu Siyu. I nodded slowly. That's a beautiful name. My name is Su Huai. You should remember it. The man blinked, confused. Why should I remember your name? Because, I said, my voice dropping an octave, I am your future nephew-in-law. Before he could process that, I grabbed his arm. Come on. Let me buy you a drink at the best restaurant in town. What do you say? I have things to do. I narrowed my eyes, the temperature in the hallway seemingly dropping. The man swallowed hard, his protest vanishing. Okay, let's go. Inside the room, the noise finally stopped. Chu Siyu listened as the footsteps faded into the distance. Only then did she peek out from under her oversized hood, revealing a pale, thin face. Her eyes were dull, her cheeks stained with faint tear tracks, and she had bitten her lip until it bled. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just pulled her thin blanket over herself and curled up in the corner of the bed. As she drifted into a fitful sleep, she began to dream. She dreamt of being 6 years old again, back before her mother had vanished. In her dream, her father never lost his spirit. He didn't become a shell of a man or spend his days drowning his sorrows in a bottle. He didn't wander out into the darkness one night, only to stumble into the river and be torn apart by the monsters lurking in the depths. As long as her parents were alive, she wasn't an orphan. The aunt she had never even met couldn't swoop in like a vulture. That woman wouldn't have been able to use the excuse of taking care of her to steal every scrap of her inheritance. But the dream didn't last. It never did. Her parents vanished, replaced by her aunt's face. It was a mask of thick white powder and a fake, sickening smile. I could almost see her standing there, clutching Siyu's hand and telling the world that her parents had met with a tragic accident. She promised everyone she would take responsibility for the poor girl. The neighbors fell for it, and they praised her. They called her a saint. That was the day the parasites moved into her home. Her aunt and uncle took over everything, but they didn't actually raise her. The only person who cared for her was an old servant who had been there since the day she was born. Every cent the couple spent came from her parents' hard-earned wealth. Siyu was only 6 years old. She was powerless. When she tried to tell people the truth, they dismissed her words as childish nonsense. When she kept trying, the whispers turned ugly. They called her ungrateful. They said she had no heart. Public opinion is a terrifying thing. In the streets, her aunt and uncle were the picture of elegance and nobility. But once the doors were locked, the masks came off. They turned back into the greedy toads they truly were. Slowly, Siyu stopped talking. She stopped trying to reach out to anyone. She learned to hide every emotion, every fear, and every hope deep inside her chest. She wanted to escape that gilded cage more than anything. She didn't care about the money. She didn't care about the family reputation. She would have given it all to her aunt just for a chance to be free. But even freedom was a luxury she couldn't afford. One day, her aunt approached her with a cold, calculating glint in her eyes. She told Siyu she had arranged a marriage for her. The groom was the first prince of the great Huang dynasty. He was supposedly a man of great talent, handsome and brilliant. To the rest of the world, it looked like a dream come true. To Siyu, it was just another set of chains.